Got the dirt.
I'm all about the Benjamins, ain't I? I be running to the shows and ain't never had the stage right. Freak them hoes on the late night, hey. And in the daylight, gotta get my cake right. Ain't about nothing that we can't buy. To be around me, a nigga gotta have a great mind. It's 4-5, not an 8-5. And waving 4 fingers in that pussy nigga ain't mine. I got about the streets, hey, and got focused on the cheese. For me, my brother did a 7 P's. For them licks, I owe that nigga everything. I ain't nothing like you bitches, I'm a G. The 7 letter and a fucking P. You bitches serving pussy for a fee. Brother, please, that can never be me. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, hit me if it's urgent. Every day I'm working. Friday, Saturday, Friday into Sunday. Every day I'm hustling. I be getting money. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, hit me if it's urgent. Every day I'm working. Friday, Saturday, Friday into Sunday. Every day I'm hustling. I be getting money. Speaking on me, gon' make a situation better. Glad I don't quick compared to me, they'll never measure. If she talking pressure, know I'm with whatever. Going undefeated, I'm a heavyweight stepper. Your mama raised a hoe, and my mama raised a hustler. Thinking we the same as where you really had me fucked up. I don't knock the hoes, baby girl, I'm just not one. Why I got my knots up, you was getting knocked up. Hey, it's only bands, brother, only bands. Little bitch, you scared to hustle, so you got an OnlyFans. Out here doing numbers, watch me hit the rolling dance. Independently funded, and they needed no advance. Don't hate on me, I've been grinding through the week. No days off, no sleep. I'm pushing those foreign keys. L-I-T. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Hit me if it's urgent. Every day I'm working. Friday, Saturday, running into Sunday. Every day I'm hustling. I be getting money. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Hit me if it's urgent. Every day I'm working. Friday, Saturday, running into Sunday. Every day I'm hustling. I be getting money.
BFG 300 shit.
Let's get to the money conversations as of lately I've been reaching. Blew the bag to get them cases closed, dismisses and repeated. I paid the cost to be the boss. It's only right a nigga beat it. Lately battling against the odds and sucker shit. No, I can't be with. I've been broke before, got rich, some see money coming least. These niggas switch up on the gangsters, get painted on car keys. And back doors been flapping open. Ain't no peace inside these streets. If my partner fuck with the suckers, then on my partner I might breathe. This Glock 30, how 30 while throwing 30 while I squeeze. Ain't coming please when they're a nigga like what the fuck you niggas think? They don't keep it gang business, they talk to hoes and the police. So what I tell you if you lost, you can't get back from biting cheese, nigga.
Hey, need a plug on the work, I can call heck. 40 plus on the gleek, that's a Chris fake. Christian moves on my feet, bitch, that's light work. Now watch me put them in the air just how I kite.
Keep it street, but most niggas don't keep it gangster. He go with rap, but not the block, gon' get your rank up. Break it out the bitch and whip the arm and hammer. Be cautious about them niggas, it's round, you niggas be walking cameras. On gang.
You niggas tricking on a bitch, I'm getting to the cheese. Yo, bitch, pussy wetter than a 7 C's. 5-inch ARPs, we got 10 of these. Fresh nickel, two-tone with the lemon squeeze. Catch them up in traffic, jacking up on you niggas' cars. Let this smacker play through if you fuck with bars. It's BFG tackle gang, we don't fuck with stars. Turn this block into a range if you fuck with ours. Christian lose on my feet, that was 3K. The bitch is broke on a trick, I'm on D-way. Now I don't fuck with ghost Glocks, they got a delay. Heavy stepper in the game like it's EA. Need a plug on the work, I can call heck. 40 plus on the gleek, that's a Chris fake. Christian moves on my feet, bitch, that's light work. Now watch me put them in the air just how I kite.
Keep it street, but most niggas don't keep it gangster. He go with rap, but not the block, gon' get your rank up. Break it out the bitch and whip the arm and hammer. Be cautious about the niggas, it's round, you niggas be walking cameras. On gang.
DJ Beats.
I'm tired of the fake ass love they be giving. Say you ain't the same, but I'm knowing you ain't different. Off a perk right now, I was getting in my feelings. I think people try to hurt me just to see if I'ma feel it. I was trying to feel some things I ain't felt in a little minute. I was giving you my heart, my last came with it. You was shooting for the stars, I was shooting for a million. I was young and I ain't understand, I'm older now I get it. Come my phone, what you doing, bitch, I'm working, I ain't chilling. Say you love me when I'm down, but hate it when I'm winning. I was sober for some years, but I got a junkie in me. Family in the chain gang, I ain't seen them in a minute. Black tea, black sheep, I'm the one that you had left eye. Stars in the roof, now I'm headed to the west side. Never fall in love with a bitch, I know she ain't mine. Treat her like the rollie on the wrist, watch her pass time. Used to be in love, but I learned my lesson back then. I just want a hoe who do it better than my last bitch. I'm pouring up the red, Kayla told me I was damn mid. I got problems in my head, baby, I come with some bad hits. But got it coming home, I don't wanna see his mama cry. Big boss, I ain't tripping if a nigga gotta die. Tryna get them M's for that pain in his mama eyes. I gotta be headstrong, but deep down it's hurting me inside. I was down bad, had to call the plug back. I know the script, I'm sticking to it like a thumb tape. I cut him off with playing games, how you love that? Shawty got the thuggin' with my heart, I had to thug back. I can press a button on you, bitch, kill a pop off. Wanted to look out this for my daddy, he was locked up. Wanna see my cousin one more time, but she boxed off. Graveyard talking to the dead, bitch, I'm chopped up. Started from the bottom, now I'm CEO and business. Granny told me never ever put no trust up in these bitches. When they speaking from mistakes that they had made, you gotta listen. I'll be working till the sun comes up, I ain't fit. My brother told me keep that thing on me. I get to myself like, what they changed on me? Yeah, I'ma pull up on you, gas tank on me. If you love me like you say you do, you gotta show me something, I gotta see.
Niggas know me, been off the points is like back when. Gang in the field, bitch, we be something like the Pac-10.
Gangland, we around this motherfucker, man.
Don't make, bitch, stand on that. To the head, I'll show a nigga's feelings. My ninth and wood nigga, up the street from the village.
We ain't into that. You niggas don't talk no guns, we ain't into that. I'm so
Smack thing about Mackie, he gon' stand on business. Make sure you put him down, never leave a witness. No love for the suckers, never on forgiveness. Stomp down on these niggas, cause niggas is big. Ooh, about to blow something. Man got the stick, about to hold something. Ooh.
Y'all know what it is. It's Gangland TV. Sit there and live. Hit the like button. Don't be boosty. And subscribe to the channel. And hit the notification bell, man. That shit easy, man. You know what I'm saying? Easy. Subscribing, that's free as fuck. Hit the notification bell, that's free as fuck. You know what I'm saying? Come on, man. That shit's free.
Gang in the field, bitch, we be something like the Pac-10.
There was a confrontation between Death Row Records and Bad Boy Records, or backstage of a show. He says, yes, sir. So what happened was, like I said, they elected to have Biggie Smalls or Mr. Wallace perform. And while they were leaving, they were planning on leaving probably because they knew that Death Row was coming. I don't know, but they were planning on leaving. As we're going into the auditorium or exiting our vehicles, we go into the auditorium, they're coming out. So I guess it was just a bad timing, and there was an argument that followed by a little of gunplay or a pointing. So who was the argument between? He says Mr. Shakur was the most vocal, Mr. Wallace, and then his entourage.
Captains, stick around until the end of the video to enter our Honor Retro Wave container raffle.
And I did notice one particular individual. And what particular individual did you notice? Mr. Davis, Mr. Keith Davis, or Dwayne Davis? Mr. Davis go by a nickname that you're aware of? He says, yes, sir. And he says, what's that nickname? Keefy D. And you did what you do as a result of being security, right? He says, yes, sir. He says, what did you do as a result of seeing this? He says, I jumped out of my car and I pretty much was on top of it, in my words. I pointed my gun towards the gentleman. All right, I didn't go because of issues at the club, of course. And us being unorganized, or even to the fact that Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight, as everyone always did. And he pretty much informed me that he's tired of going to the fight late, because Mike Tyson's fights usually be over then in the first round. And even with Mr. Shakur, his music, he had rapped a song for him to enter the ring in, and he wanted to be there. And he and his security caught a cab over to the fight. Mr. Shakur took a cab to the MGM Grand for the fight. Yes, sir, from the Luxor. Welcome back to another video with IDN TV. Now, we're still covering the grand jury testimony for Keefe D. Now, in this particular video, we highlight everything about Suge Knight, everything about Tupac and Tupac's security. I learned a lot of stuff about what happened that night on Vegas. Even he had to take a taxi cab to the fight because Suge Knight was taking too long. So make sure you watch this video all the way through. Make sure you like the video. It's a good read. So if you guys appreciate, me taking my time and doing all this, please make sure you comment below and like the video. Let's get right into it. All right. Good morning, sir. How are you doing today, sir? Good. Where did you grow up? I grew up initially in Los Angeles, the Watts area of Los Angeles. About the second grade, I guess that would make me around 7 or 8. My family moved to the city of Compton. And they asked, in the city of Compton, what did your father do? He says, my father was a police officer, my childhood, and the rank of captain in the city of Compton Police Department. And what's your father's name? Reginald Lilbourne Sr. And they asked, did he work for a particular unit during that time as a youth in Compton? He answered this. He says, well, initially, like most patrol officer, and he eventually, for a long time of his career, was over gang and an officer in the gang unit. Then later, he supervised the gang and homicide unit for the city of Compton. I asked, all right, now when you were growing up, did you live next to or interact with any known gang members or people who became gang members? He says, yes, sir. To be honest, my main area that I grew up in was the Mob Harus or the Lauders Park area. However, the city of Compton is one of the most unique cities. It's only 8 miles wide, pretty much kind of know or have associated with a lot of the gangs and guys from other neighborhoods because of the park and recreation, which I was real active in growing up. Little League Baseball, Pop Warner football, and basketball. Did you know somebody by the name of Marion Knight when you were growing up? He says, yes. Yes, sir, I did. And was there another name that Mr. Knight went by? Yes, sir, Suge Knight. And how did you know Mr. Knight? We had initially met. He's a year older than me in grade and in school grades. So if I was in second grade, he was a third grader. Just guys that grew up in the same area, in that same neighborhood, that was going to the same elementary school. They asked, did you ultimately play ball with Mr. Knight? Yes, sir. So Suge Knight and I, and I'm sure as a few other kids from my neighborhood, went to another school district outside of Compton Unified School District, which was Linwood Unified School District. And that's where we played high school football from the 11th to 12th grade. I had went to a Catholic school my 9th and 10th grade year, a school in Los Angeles called the Verbum Day High School. I thought I was going to be a basketball player, but I was wider instead of taller. They said, all right, I'm going to move fast forward a little bit. At some point, did you join the Compton Police Department? He says, yes, sir. And tell us about that. He says, so I started attending Cal State University of Long Beach State College. This was in 1984. But I got hired on as a jailer while I was going to school, a civilian employee job as a civilian jailer for the city of Compton Police Department. Once I finished school, then I was allowed to, I applied to become a police officer when I was at the age of 22. And in 1989, I went through the police academy, but I wasn't hired officially as a police officer until 1990. They asked this, they said, what kind of work did you do when you were a police officer with Compton? Mr. Wright replied, he says, I was a police patrol officer that worked the streets. During that time, it was only a few officers in the gang unit. It was also my father. He was a sergeant at the time, and he had 2 officers that worked under him during that time. Tim Brandon, who's no longer with us, he passed away about a year or 2 ago. And I call him Bobby, but his name is Robert Ladd, that worked under his unit.
God damn. What's going on, gang? Kid, this nigga is one of the dumbest criminals ever. Like, this nigga Keefe D gotta be one of the most dumbest criminals. Like, look at this nigga demeanor. Like, his demeanor don't give, nigga, I'm a gangster. This nigga gives, nigga, I grew up, nigga, in a good neighborhood, and nigga, shit, nigga. Like, nigga, what the fuck? I know niggas, like I said, man, shout out to my car report, nigga. You know what I mean? So, you know, a few other individuals I fuck with out there, you know, like Carver, my Carver Village niggas out there, you know what I'm saying? Hey, this the thing, right? The like my Park Village niggas and Carver niggas and you know what I'm saying, Cabinet, like nigga, I don't know, they don't act like Keefe D. They don't act like Keefe D. You know what I'm saying? I don't like Keefe D don't give me that. Like, I don't know. He gotta be one of the most dumbest criminals though. He gotta be. He gotta be one of the most dumbest criminals. Before Keefe D came out, who y'all thought killed Tupac? Yanni or
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yanni.
I have my mic on. I thought it was Suge Knight because the way I understood it was not only did he get shot from the outside, he got shot inside the car. Him and what's his name's daughter. Between
And when you thought it was you what did you think his motives was?
well, you know, the music industry is a funny place, you know what I'm saying? So, man, it could be anything, man. With Suge Knight, it could be anything, you know. But also, Suge Knight is part of the industry, so that not surprising. You know what I'm saying? Not surprising. But I feel like maybe Keefe D and his boys to the right, what's his name to the left, he was bound to get shot some way. They wanted to take him out. That was serious business right there. That was a whole team effort, as far as I'm concerned. Inside and out. You know what I'm saying? The whole objective.
Why would you think Keefe D would lie? And because now you got to think about it. If niggas was talking about Keefe D snitched on the dead. Well, it's kind of looking like he didn't snitch on the dead, all due to the fact that they wanted to make it seem like his nephew got his lick back, when in all reality, yo nephew ain't the one that shot Tupac. It was 4 people in the car. He made it seem like it was just 3 people.
Man, look, let me tell you something. I don't even, truth be told, I'm just gonna be real with it. I don't think he did anything. I think it was what's his name? Because the bullets, he was shot in the chest. They couldn't reach his chest from that side. But what's his name could? Old girl got shot in her chest, and I think in her head or arm. It's been a while since I just, was researching that. The way that any bullets that came from the car was leg related. Okay, maybe an arm or something, but the fatal ones were inside the car. Man, old boy had a gun inside the car. He shot him right in his heart. Bam, bam. Okay, and then turned around and shot old girl. She was screaming in the back. That was she was a witness. And what's his name supposedly was dating the girl in the back seat. Damn, I can't think of her name, but she's the daughter of one of them producers out there. And those were where the fatal blows came. Whatever went on outside the car, that was just ruckus, man. That fatal shit came from old boy. That's the way I saw it. I was like, damn, this motherfucker shot him in the car. Then them motherfuckers ain't killed that man. If anything, they would have damaged him, but they wouldn't have killed him. The fatal shit to me came from a hole inside the car. The driver. So all this yin yang Keefy D is talking about, I'm kind of like ignoring it because it just, I mean, I researched it. It didn't make any sense. I forgot the autopsy and everything, but they didn't do nothing but put bullets in his leg, man. They be on his arm and shit. If they hit him. If they hit him in the head, that was by accident because they couldn't shoot for shit. If you look at the bullet holes in the car, they couldn't shoot for shit. But them fatal ones, bam, right beside you. You can't miss. If you miss that, you a dumb motherfucker. No disrespect. you can't shoot with shit. You need to put the gun down. Right there, him and her in the back seat, straight up, and they both passed. That's what I researched. So whatever Keefy D is talking, I don't know what that is. Maybe they were accomplices at most, but they didn't do the fatal shot, in my belief. Some people may not agree with me, but I say go back and look at that. Go back and look at the bullet holes in the car, and go back and look at the trajectory. The thing that I saw, damn, I wish I could remember it. The thing that I saw, they showed the trajectory of all the bullets, and the fatal ones came from inside the car. So they're accomplices as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, Keefy D and Suge was cool.
I know. It's a team effort. Make it look all. See, if the guy's riding by you, see, let me tell you, this man, what's his name? Shit. Suge Knight. No disrespect, but this man, you know, he kind of smart in a way. He had it look like somebody rolled up, right? So while that hail of bullets was jumping off, all he did was get off 2 or 3 bullets and the shit was done. Done deal. Job done. This was a team effort. One on the right, one on the left. He can't see. Pac could have gotten out on the right hand side, but he would have been shot up. Maybe he made him had a leg or two, but the left hand side had him covered. So if he did get out the car, you know what I'm saying? He still would have been able to, take care of business. That was a hit. That was an ordered hit, orchestrated hit. I'll always believe that. Because I'm looking at, So what is this guy talking about? Because whatever bullets was from that car, back seat, front seat, these guys couldn't shoot. They peppered the whole side of that car. So I'm like, what was you shooting? And to me, they couldn't shoot. Because unless you stopped at a stoplight, because they were moving, unless you stopped at a stoplight, which they didn't, contrary to popular belief, they didn't. They rolled, especially with that.
So they was still rolling when Tupac was killed.
Yeah.
But they had stopped at a light on Koval and Flamingo.
They stopped at a light after the shooting, but you have to understand there were lights before that. That's when they showed the distance between that last light where they started the action and the next light. By the time they got to the next light, the deed was done. That's where they stopped. So, I mean, the stories are twisted up. But me personally, no. They no, man, that shit was done from the inside of the car. That's the way I saw it. When they got through talking about it, they looked at the synopsis. I wish I could find it so you could see it. But the synopsis was he was shot from the inside of the car. Now some people say, Zara talking out the side of her neck. Go look at it. Go check it out. I saw what I saw. And they broke that shit down like a shotgun. Bullet trajectories, shots. They showed the side, how the car was peppered on the side, and which the way they said was peppered, they were moving. You may not have been moving fast, but they were moving. Because the way that the gunshots, whatever they were using, the gunshots were peppered all inside the car. And then you got the damage to Pac himself, where he got hit. What I honed in on was the one to his heart, and I think it was somewhere in his head, either his neck. I can't remember his neck or head, something like that. And then the girl in the back, which a lot of people don't talk about. The girl in the back, she got shot and she died. That was Tupac's girl, or someone he was playing with. You know what I'm saying? So I know for a fact that someone didn't like. Well, the girl's dad didn't like Tupac dating her. Okay.
Who? Missy Jones' daughter?
Yeah, he didn't like that shit. But they dated anyway. You know what I'm saying? You know how Pac was. I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, it's my girl. There was a lot of, before this thing, from what I understand, there was a lot of beef between Quincy and Tupac. They had a few arguments, mostly over his daughter. So I don't know, man.
So you mean to tell me? So where did you hear that Tupac was mobile when he was when the assassination took place, when it transpired?
This was closer to when it happened, like about a month or two later. It was on YouTube. I cannot remember what it was. I can't, but they broke the shit down. And I was like, holy shit. Damn. Who was it? I can't think of the name right now because it was so long ago. But they broke it down, and I believe it. So I mean, all things are possible. I wasn't there, but I know that when they broke that shit down, it came to the fact that who was watching? Because it was somebody that also covered the Easy-E case. How he got. I can't remember who that was because it was so long ago, baby. But I'm telling you, they broke that shit down. I was like, oh shit, So it's like the commotion going outside the car was like, what do you call that? A distraction, while the shit that was going on inside the cars was really happening. I wish I could remember. I'm gonna have to go through my shit and try to find it. Yeah.
I remember they were saying they was stationary and they had all stopped, and they seen the girls making a commotion because he was hanging out the window. You know how Keefy D was putting two on the team. Keefy D sound like a hater. Yeah, because he was all hanging out the window like a cheerleader. And like, shut your bitch ass up, fucking rat. And he said that's how they saw him. And then, all the visual reenactments that I see a white Cadillac pulling up to the front of the light where you stop at the crosswalk, and then they pull out a gun and shoot. Like, this is in all the reenactments that they show that they are sitting stationary. That's why I'm wondering, like, who the fuck is out here saying that story that they was mobile when the assassination took place?
I might have to find it, but from what I understand, this white Cadillac was moving up on them from the traffic light before up to where they stopped. The Cadillac was moving up on them. God, I gotta find it. But they did the whole thing. But that was closer to when it, like about a month or two after it happened, the person broke it down. So I'm gonna have to go back and find it in my history. But I don't know. That was, again, that guy speculating what's going on here may be the truth about how it happened. But I know one thing is true. He got shot from the inside of the car and the outside of the car. Definitely that.
Let's get back into these transcripts.
And they were pretty much gang officers for the city. They asked, at some point while you're working in patrol, did you start moonlighting or working security in other to increase your money coming in? Mr. Wright says, yes. After I made probation, to be honest, in 1990 when I started, I was one of those officers that worked a lot of overtime and did a lot of moonlighting because I was still young. And so I did a lot of work and eventually started to work for Death Row Records. And to understand a little bit about the moonlighting generally, before we get into Death Row, was it common for patrol officers or was it allowed for patrol officers to moonlight as security while they were off duty? Yes, we had a procedure a lot of us followed, but they didn't enforce it too much. But if you got caught doing something, then it got enforced. But we had to put in what we called a work permit, which meant that we had to get the permission from the police chief or maybe a commander. I forgot at the time, to be honest, to be approved to work that particular job. But they allowed us to work pretty much anything we put in for. They asked this, they said, before we get to the Death Row moonlighting, was there any other kind of moonlighting you got into? Mr. Wright replied, he said, okay, I worked nightclubs, comedy clubs. We had a hotel in the city of Compton. It was called Ramada Inn. It's a casino now. And so I worked there 1 or 2 nights a week, working in the comedy club or in the hotel in general. Trucking companies, I worked at a few production sets as well. And what were you supposed to do while you're moonlighting? He said, mainly I was there on the production sets. It was because movies, they would like to film in Compton and do a lot of things to get actual sets on video shoots and stuff like that. So it was mostly to protect the equipment because, you know, you have all of this expensive equipment out here and they wanted to watch that. They also maybe wanted to keep the gang members away because they like to pressure the production companies into putting them in the scene. They had a sense of entitlement. While they're in our neighborhood, one of us is going to be representing, you know, in this set or this shoot. Now, you were familiar with the gang area members at the time. And were they familiar with you? Our police department was about 130 to 160 unit. Squad. My father, Reginald Wright Sr., was actually real popular in the city, and I was like little Reggie. And I kind of wanted to be like him, like my father, into the gang initially. Later. Not initially, I was a little different, but eventually, yes. That kind of grew when I was kind of known well a lot into the gangs and the gang members in the city. Now, you mentioned Death Row. Before we talk about what you did at Death Row, can you tell us what Death Row actually was? He replies, he says, Death Row Records was a record label that had some, maybe 1 or 2 R&B singers on it, but mainly was gangster rap music. And to your knowledge, who ran Death Row Records? Suge. Well, Marion Hugh Knight is his name, but we call him, or I refer to him really as Suge Knight. He was the CEO of the company. And he says, what do you call him when you get interacted with him? He says Suge. They asked Suge? Yeah, Suge. So we'll just call him Suge. Okay. So how did you ever come to the point where the idea of moonlighting for Suge came up? It eventually happened in 1994. And how did this come about? Well, my father, Reginald Wright Sr., had some intel on one of the guys or some of the guys that were working for him because he was instrumental, not having been a smart move to find out later. But at the time, he was hiring guys that were getting out of prison and giving them jobs. And by saying that, you mean Suge was hiring people out of prison and giving them jobs? Yes, sir. People that he grew up with and from the city of Compton and other cities, yeah. I could say other places as well, Long Beach and the Los Angeles area. But he was real instrumental in doing that. That was a real big thing that he wanted to do or was proud of, to be honest. So my father got intel that a few of the guys that was working for him were planning on coming up after extorting him or robbing him for money. He knew and he had a relationship and told me, he says, hey, I need you to reach out and get a hold of Suge. Now, to this day, I do not remember how I did, but I know I eventually got to him and we met, all 3 of us. They asked, so when you say all 3 of us, who are you talking about? He says, myself, Reginald Sr., and Mr. Knight, or Suge Knight. Now, what happened at this meeting? He says pretty much him saying, man, some of them guys that are working for you are planning on maybe, robbing you and taking advantage of you for some money, that he had got this information. Suge Knight laughed it off. He says, oh, man, they all happy, they won't do nothing to me. I ain't worried about that. But that's why I need you over here working for me, looking out. Myself, I had recently just got into a car accident. This is not why I'm like this currently. And I had messed up my right ankle. So, and plus, I was 27, 26 years of age. It was in the mid 90s. The atmosphere and I wasn't married. I wanted to be around for it, for lack of a better word. Fairly to say, it's very, at this time, gangster rap was taking off, particularly in Compton, fair to say. Mr. Wright replies, he says, yes, sir. And what that brought was a lot of money, girls, and all of the things associated with fame. Correct. And so they asked this, I mean, you sit on the 50-yard line of the Super Bowl, stuff I haven't done, you know, just from being a cop that I was exposed to. So it's fair to say that you were attracted to the lifestyle that your acquaintance Suge Knight had developed? He says, yes, sir. So what did your father think? Father decide to work for Death Row Records? He right there told him he can't do that the position I'm in. Now, to be honest, one of the guys that's working for you, I'm trying to investigate, investigate them on open cases right now. I'm trying to put them in jail. I wouldn't do that. And they asked, so your father was a hard no when it came to? He says, yes, it was a hard no. It was like, however, even when he told him that I wasn't ready for it, to be honest, and he recommended a lieutenant that had an ownership in a security company that he knew, that Suge knew his, some family ties to that. And he said that you might want to talk to him, which he did. His name was Danny Sneed, and he was a lieutenant. And he eventually was the boss as far as putting paperwork and contacting the security company, which was a private security company called Cabo6 Security, and having them do kind of stuff where I was like the street supervisor. Or whatever I would do would always be when they needed it, like special events or when they went places. It wasn't like an everyday bodyguard thing. I was just there for a video shoot when they would go to the MTV Awards or something like that. So I think we skipped a step. So you ultimately decide that you would moonlight for Suge in Death Row? Yes, sir. Okay, and despite your father thinking it wasn't the greatest idea, you decided that you wanted to be a part of it? Well, to be in charge of it. Someone else was in charge. And then so at this point, you're moonlighting, like you're mentioning, bodyguarding for Suge every now and then, going to events at that point. He replies, yes, sir. And then at some point, do you suffer another physical injury that causes you to resign from the Compton PD? He says, yes, sir. Can you tell us briefly about what the injury was? He says, yes. He says, I had a traffic accident where I re-injured my right ankle. My ankle would just swell up by just standing on it for an hour or two. And so I knew at that point I wasn't capable, when the city also knew I wasn't capable of being a patrol officer for the city of Compton, anymore. Did you get a medical retirement from the Compton PD? Yes, sir. And then after you take medical retirement from Compton PD, what do? I really was more involved with Death Row Records security. Also opened up my own private security company. I'm sorry, about what month and year did you resign? He replies, he says, I've resigned and it didn't become official until 1996. However, it was off about a year, going through the whole process with my company. And that probably started in April of 1995, where I was more around. There's like a bureaucratic process that takes place from when you kind of make the decision to become official at the Compton Police Department. He says for the retirement, going through the workers' comp and all of that took about a year. But in April, they asked in April of 1995, you're working up setting Right Way, which is the name of that. He says productive service, Right Way Protective Services. And that was your security company? He says, yes, sir. And who was the primary client for Right Way? Death Row Records. And what would you do for Death Row Records? I had a security guard at the office space that they had. I had two at the recording studio that they had. And whenever their artists went out on promotional events or stuff like that, 1 or 2 security officers with them. Snoop Dogg, who was a popular or the biggest rap artist on the label, and Dr. Dre at the time. Now, these two, Dre pretty much only used my security when he went publicly. However, Snoop had 2 guys with him at all times because he had just went through a situation of his own with the case. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. So you had security at an office space. Where was the office space? He says the office space at the time, well, we went through 3 during this period, but on Wilshire, Westwood, and the Murdoch Plaza is what it was called. And then we had an office on 9171, which was the Larry Flint building on Wilshire. And then later on, come after 96, a building on 8200 Wilshire. That was like the headquarters or the office space for people that were really professional people. I called them like staff, like the PR, the art department. The accounting firm was pretty much outside, but we had a later on-site bookkeeper, a receptionist, and Suge Knight's assistant.
Eve to me is basically freedom. It's a giant open universe where you can do what.
So people weren't necessarily talent on a yes, sir. So you had an office space where you had, more like a 9 to 5 workers and the professionals, the staff and type thing. He says, yes, sir. And then you had a studio where you would record records, artists go to and create music for Death Row Records. He says, yes, sir. That was in Tarzana, California, a studio called Can-Am, which was called Radio Studios in Tarzana, California. And you said that there would be security there. You also mentioned a couple of the best known artists at the time. We're talking about 1995, right? He says, yes, sir. On Death Row Records, which was Snoop Dogg, he says Snoop Dogg and the proper name Calvin Broadus, he says, yes, sir. And then you had Dr. Dre as well. Yes, sir, Andre Young. And they were also huge artists at the time. Is it fair to say that? He says, yes, sir. And the producer, he was also a co-owner. He says, yes, sir. And then Suge would have regular security with him. He says, yes, I will be with him a lot of the time, probably at the point about 60% of his life, of his day. At that point, not 100%. But I wouldn't call myself security because he was a lot bigger than me, a lot stronger than me, but I will be with him. He also has somewhat of an entourage. I mean, like homeboys that will be with him, maybe 3 or 4. So when he rode, he would generally be by himself in the car, but he will always be 85 to 90% of his life, maybe with two or other people with him. Now, you talked about homeboys. Assume you're talking about the people affiliated from the neighborhood. He says, yes, sir. Gentlemen that I spoke of had just got out of prison, and he may have given them jobs and stuff like that. Generally, those type of things. Did Suge associate himself with a particular neighborhood? He says, yes, sir. He says, what's that? Initially, the bigger one is called Eastside Piru, but the other gentlemen in the neighborhood where he grew up were Lourdes Park Piru, and it broke off to smaller sides. The 4 or 5 streets in our area where we grew up, they called themselves Mob Pirus, M-O-B Pirus, P-I-R-U. What did Mob stand for? Did Mob stand for anything? He says, yes, sir. He says, what does it stand for? It stands for Members of Bloods. So is it fair to say Mob Piru was a blood-affiliated gang? Yes, sir. So I have to ask, since you're a former police, your father is head of the gang unit, and you're working security and hanging out with Mr. Suge Knight? He says, yes. And then Mr. Knight also was around Mob Piru members who were also affiliated with Mob Piru himself? Yes, sir. They asked, how does that work? Well, number one, because contrary to what people believe, especially back then, they had a little bit of respect for the police. Now, the kids hate police, but back then they kind of had a little respect. So it wasn't like we were best buddies or hanging out or anything, but I was also their childhood friend. Most of them I really knew before Suge Knight. We all went to school, the same schools, the same junior high schools. Now, we didn't have the same high schools because they went to Compton Unified School District, where I went to the Linwood Unified School District, but we all knew each other. I don't want to take a lot of credit for it, but I really got to say it because of the relationship or maybe the fear they had of my father, Reginald Sr. That they knew, if something happened or was disrespectful to Reginald Sr., something like that, the law more down on them or more sterner and hand them down maybe than being retired and not so high on the totem pole. But I really do believe he had respect for him because he was really that type of cop. And for a lot of this, his chief and all of them would attest to that. He was different. We learned later in life that in law enforcement, you got to be more community oriented, where in the early 90s, police was just a little bit different in my opinion. So part of it is that your dad and you grew up in the neighborhood. You were known to all of the folks in the neighborhood. Pretty much, yes. And then also to the fact that your dad was a lieutenant in a gang unit in Compton may have had an effect on how people treated you as well. Well, that's how I perceived it, yes, sir. So as part of being security for Suge Knight or Death Row or running security for Death Row, did you become aware of the rivalry with Bad Boy Records? He says, yes, sir. He says, can you tell us about that rivalry? Well, you want me to go from the beginning of the war, where I believe it started, from where it started. From what I believe, and it's kind of a little story. So initially, Suge Knight and the owner of Bad Boy Records, which is Sean Puffy Combs, they had a decent relationship, a working relationship, even though he was from New York and Death Row was based in Los Angeles. But New York was kind of, where the big record labels were. Now, even though our record label was based in Beverly Hills, that was kind of over us, which was in Interscope Records. But their parent company was in New York as well. So we went to New York about, I can say from 95 when I came around. We probably was in New York at least 8 to 10 days out of a month that way. So they had a decent relationship, and Suge allowed them to use some samples from his album that he called The Chronic. Okay, I'm just going to break that down a little bit. So you would go out to New York as security with Death Row Records and Suge quite a bit during this time in 1995. He says yes, and it was mainly business trips, and that so often it would mainly just be myself, Suge, usually a female companion, and maybe 2 of his homeboys. That would vary. And you talked about Suge giving samples to Puffy. Can you explain what that means? He says yes, sample songs are generally songs that have been out already, that are pretty much successful, that artists like to put out in there to make us think of some reason like it's already been out and it's been successful. Another rapper or an artist will come up and use that song. So it is like the beats. There will be the same beat or the same music or melody on the song, and then you would come lend the beat or melody to another rapper, and they will rap their own rhymes over it. Correct, sir. So what you're saying is Suge has such a good relationship with Mr. Combs that he would even lend out or let him have beats from music from a successful record that Mr. Combs can use for his artist. He says, yes, sir. Okay, and is it fair to say that typically somebody charges for something like that? He says, charges a fair amount or deny. They don't even allow it to happen. So to you, that was indicative of the relationship between Suge and Puffy at the time? He says, yeah. So they had a great working relationship, in my opinion, at the time. And so did that change it all? He says, and so now Suge, there's this rapper by the name of Tupac Shakur. Yeah, Tupac. Well, I guess his name is Tupac Shakur, and he's in prison. Where is he in prison at? He's in New York, and he needed some financial help. Initially, that's all Suge. His wife at the time reached out to Suge and asked Suge for some assistance. Whose wife reached out to Suge? He says Tupac's. So Tupac's wife reached out to Suge Knight for financial assistance. He says, yeah, to say, hey, I'm having it rough here. Some of my people out here needed some help. And, can you help me out? Because they had dealings in the past. And Suge was like, okay. So myself, David Kenner, we went to the prison. Now he says, who's David Kenner? He was like an attorney, the company's attorney, but he kind of had a lot of like business manager for Death Row. So they asked, he had a law degree, but he was acting as a business manager for Death Row. For Suge Knight, yeah. They kind of like had a close relationship. So you 3 go out to New York. What was the purpose of going out to New York? He initially had just went out there to check on him and talk to him. Talk to who? Mr. Shakur. And so during our conversation, it came up, hey, he's doing bad. His record label, who was also our distributor, Interscope Records, pretty much was done with him. It felt like they gave him too much money and advanced him too much money, and he was in the hole. And he had the #1 album in the charts at the time. And it was like, hey, because of all his legal bills and stuff like that, we're not giving you any more money. And this is what Mr. Shakur was replying to you with Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight, I wasn't there, Mr. Knight. But what I know from hearing Mr. Kenner and Mr. Knight talk about when they came back to the car while I was in the car. He says, all right, so you became aware that Mr. Shakur was having financial problems and needed financial assistance while he was in prison in New York. He says, yes, sir. And did Mr. Knight did you observe Mr. Knight make a decision to do anything to assist Mr. Shakur? He said he came back to the car and he says, hey, I heard him get on the phone with Jimmy Iovine, who was the president or the CEO of Interscope Records. And they had conversations about how they can get him, give him some money, and I can assume fully responsibility for his contracts because he was still under the contract with Interscope Records. They eventually made a deal where they assigned his rights over to Suge Knight. And Suge Knight bought his mother a house while he was in prison and was giving him financial support. This is between May/June of 1995. So during this time, they're trying to figure it out. David Kenner assured Mr. Knight he could possibly get Mr. Shakur out on a pill bond. And eventually they worked out a deal where he got $1.5 million up and got him out on a pill bond. But then there was a music award show. So before we get to the music award show, so it's to your understanding, having been around all of this time and dealing with him 60% of his life, essentially during this time, that Mr. Knight obtained and put up $1.5 million as an appeal bond, released Mr. Shakur from custodial status of the New York prison. He says, yes, sir. And it was a combination of other entities that also put up the money. He says, yeah, okay. So during the time while Mr. Shakur is still in prison, did a public incident occur that demonstrated some type of rivalry between Mr. Knight and Mr. Combs of Bad Boy Records? He says, yes, sir. So what happened? Now, Mr. Shakur is still not out of prison, but things are beginning to work. You know how the justice systems work. Being assured that the wheels are turning. but there was a big urban hip hop music award called the Source Awards. It was a real big popular magazine at the time. They had an award show in New York, and Mr. Knight came out there and he had his artists performing. And he put up a cardboard picture of Mr. Shakur in one of those jail cells because he had we consider Death Row and all of his artists on Death Row, which means an inmate. And he had him in a cell and was announcing to everybody that Mr. Shakur is now on Death Row. People really weren't catching it. You know a lot more than most people do. So to explain it, is there a performance at this award show? I'm sorry, yes. So they were performing. That's why they had him on stage, because one of them came out of a cell and they performed their part of a song. And so the part of the set,
Man, this nigga is fucking telling. I am scared of niggas like this.
So
That nigga is telling.
This is all Keefy D? Keefy D?
That ain't Keefy D. That's Reggie White's son giving all this information.
Okay, because I was okay, I follow now. Because I was like, who sounds like the cop's son? So now it is. Okay. But he is spilling them beans, man. He's telling everything. Play by play.
That nigga is in there. So how did the East Coast and West Coast war start? Well, it started, god damn.
Yeah.
Well, damn.
Hey. Sometimes we got to keep our mouth shut, you know what I'm saying? And my thing is, you know, I was around when I was a little kid when that whole thing started. And I'm interested, you know, this war pretty much is never ending. But we're talking something that happened back in 76, 75, I believe. Am I correct? What started the war?
You said what started the war?
He's talking about between the Crips and the Bloods, right?
Nah, what started the war between the East Coast and the West Coast?
Oh, that's when Eazy-E and them was okay. When Eazy-E and them were on the outs. Okay.
Nah, Eazy-E and them wasn't even in the picture. It was what started the East Coast West Coast war is, as you hear, he's saying that it was a award show, the Source Awards, and Suge went up there talking shit. And when Suge went up there talking shit, talking about when we all want to tired of a nigga all in the videos.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
Come to Death Row.
Yeah.
That's when, yeah. So he's explaining right now to them that the East Coast West Coast war started when Suge went to that award show and said all that bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
man.
Shout out Miss Cynthia for that $20 super sticker. Shout out Miss Cynthia.
Yeah, that was a lot of people. I remember were talking about that, him, Diddy being in all the videos and stuff. We all noticed it, but I didn't, you know. Wow.
This nigga on here telling.
Oof.
He telling everything too. That it's like motherfucker be wondering how the police be knowing shit. Nigga, your daddy the police. Nigga, why you out here snitching?
Yep. And again, I don't know, man. There was a lot of undercover shit going on back then too. There's a lot of shit. I wish I was more cognizant. I was a child. I wish I was more cognizant. Like meaning I was like 19, 20, 21 when all the shit was going on. I wasn't really, man. I didn't really get into it until Pac got shot. And I was like, oh, what the hell? Because I love Pac, you know what I'm saying? But man, yeah, damn. Yeah.
Yeah, this shit getting deep. Come on, let's get back into it.
There's a display that looks like a jail cell with a bunch of jail cells. He says, yes, sir. And then one of the jail cells displays Mr. Shakur being painted, or he said it was like a cardboard cut. Okay, so one of them in the jail cells, he says, yeah. So people probably saw it and didn't know, but I know. That's because I'm involved. He says, yeah. They asked, so what was that supposed to mean? He says, Mr. Knight gets on stage and he wins an award for the best executive of the year or best album of the year, something like that. He gets up there and publicly gives a statement disrespecting Puffy Combs. So are you aware whether this award show was televised or not? It was. So Mr. Knight is on stage at the awards that's being televised, and it's fair to say that he's taking verbal shots at Mr. Combs. He says yes. And that was the beginning of the rivalry. So that night, we go to an after party, and Mr. Combs approached me, Mr. Knight, at the club. It was called The Tunnel in New York. He says, were you there? He says, I was there, standing right there. And they approached him. He's like, hey, what's going on? Why are you dissing me in front of everybody like that? Then they got heated, words or exchange of words, and they walked away. Everybody went, on their own separate ways. So this is August. The reason I know the date, because it was around my birthday, which is August the 5th. So it was either around the 3rd or the 6th of August when this took place. So then Mr. Knight goes to Atlanta. I wasn't with him, thank God, I missed the plane. But since you weren't there, let me ask this way. After Mr. Knight returned, did you see Mr. Knight after he returned from Atlanta? Oh, from Atlanta, or do you mean from New York? He says from Atlanta. So after this incident you're talking about, did you see him after that? He says, yes, sir. Did you come to learn that Mr. Knight's close associate was killed in Atlanta? He says, yes, sir. And who did Mr. Knight blame for his associate getting killed in Atlanta? He says a friend that was a close associate to Mr. Sean Combs, Puffy Combs. So Mr. Knight communicated with you that he believed Mr. Combs was responsible, if not directly, indirectly, for the murder of his good friend in Atlanta. He says, yes, sir. And Mr. Knight was in Atlanta when this occurred. He says, yes, sir. So it's fair to say, based on your observations, this only escalated the rivalry between Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records? He says, yes, sir. He asks a question. He says, as security, would you have to, go to events where Bad Boy may be also? Would you have to do security for Death Row where Bad Boy will also be there after that Atlanta incident? He says, okay, that would have been my responsibility. He says, yes. Now, generally, like I said, literally, it was an early morning flight. I missed the flight, so I was generally supposed to be there. People always tell me it was God looking out for me by keeping me there. But there's a little bit more I want to explain to the mindset why this rivalry started. They said, okay, what's your personal knowledge? He says, just I know from the industry, but I don't know. He says, let me ask you this. Did you ever have a conversation with Mr. Shakur, whether he had feelings towards Bad Boy Records? After his release from prison, not while in prison. He says, okay, when was Mr. Shakur released from prison? He says, October 12th, 1995. At that point, did Mr. Shakur become a recording artist for Death Row Records? He says, yes, sir. And he says, was he somebody now whose security you were responsible for? He says, I was responsible. I had security with him every day while he was out in public. And was it you specifically or somebody that you employed? He says, I hired. I had 4 to 5 different security guards on him daily, different ones daily from time actually till his death, to be honest. Now this escalating situation with Bad Boy Records, did you become aware whether Bad Boy Records had used Compton gangs for security when they were in LA or the Southern California region? He says, yes, sir. And he says, based on your observation, what gangs did Bad Boy employ as the security while in Southern California? He says, gentlemen from the Compton Southside Crips. Familiar with the Southside Crips growing up in Compton? From growing up other than playing baseball with them. Knowing they were from that area, but not until I became a police officer or started working in the jail that I learned the difference, to be honest. So he says you became more familiar with Southside after you were adult and working in jails while working patrol. He says that would be correct. He says, so how did you become aware that Bad Boy Records were using Southside Crips as the security in Southern California? He said streets talking, but mainly saw them at a few events with them in large numbers. So you go back to Mr. Shakur when he was released. When he talks about the anger he had towards Puffy or Sean Combs and his primary recording artist, Christopher Wallace, he says, yes, sir. And do you remember what Christopher Wallace's rap name was? He had a few, but Biggie Smalls, Notorious Big, Big Papa. So without getting into details, is it fair to say that Mr. Shakur had really strong feelings about Mr. Combs and Mr. Wallace? He says, yes, sir. And that ever reflected on any of his music? He says, music and even portrayed in music videos that he did during that time period. He says, are you familiar with the song called Hit 'Em Up? He says, yes, sir. And it is fairly to say that that song and that music video, Mr. Shakur goes out of his way to insult Mr. Combs and Mr. Wallace in the most graphic and explicit possible. He said it's possible. He says it's still one of the top 3 diss records ever talked about in the hip hop community, as far as a record label in disrespect to another label as their family members. I mean, it's fair to say that Mr. Shakur was talking about having sex with Mr. Wallace's wife. He says, yes, sir. And
First off, fuck your bitch in the clique you claim. West side, where we ride, we equipped with gang. You claiming to be a killer, but I fucked your wife.
Yeah.
Oh, that nigga was on the top, nigga. Yeah, bad boys, nigga, fuck for life. That
Yeah,
nigga was on their top.
Yep.
That nigga said Biggie Smalls and Junior Mafia some mark ass bitches. That nigga was on their top. God damn.
Woo.
Why is this nigga snitching on a motherfucking diss song?
Man.
Why is this nigga snitching on a diss song?
I don't know, man. I know that
This nigga snitching on the diss song? Oh yeah, man. Y'all ever heard of Hit 'Em Up? I would have been like, bro, hell nah, I ain't heard of no motherfucking Hit 'Em Up. I don't know what Hit 'Em Up, Hit 'Em Down. I ain't never heard neither one of them songs, bro. What song is that? This nigga in here. You ever heard the song Hit 'Em Up?
Yeah.
Yep. First off, fuck your bitch and click you, Craig. Like, nigga, what the fuck?
Man,
Get out the way, yo. Get out the way, yo. Biggie Smalls just got dropped.
Yo, man. That shit was wicked, dude. That shit was wicked. Man. Yeah, he telling it all. I don't. Damn, that's all I got to say.
He was on a little Kim top in that motherfucker too.
Yeah, he hit him up. He hit everybody. Nobody was spared, man. Nobody was spared. I'm just like, wow, you know.
These niggas out here telling on diss songs, like, god damn, like this telling shit is getting out of hand. I didn't know it was getting out of hand since back then. I know niggas snitched and niggas told. These niggas is telling, like, this is transcripts. Like, nigga, this is your when they be like, hey, bro, go get your discovery. This is in the discovery.
Yeah, they been telling shit back then. But now they still got some people that, you know, got knowledge of the back then too, now telling it. So it's like, wow, dude, really? You need to, like, I don't know if I would have snitched like that, man. Some things you just don't know. You know what I'm saying? But hey, who knows, man? Who knows? I don't know. I wonder if he's getting. I don't know.
Like on the movie, you watch the Biggie movie. That nigga Lil C's, nigga. That nigga like, hey, Big, you hear this? That nigga like, nigga, god damn, that nigga on our koofies, nigga. Why he on us like that, nigga? Because that nigga Puffy, nigga.
That was the thing back there, you know, when Suge Knight got into the game. That was the thing. That's what kept people selling records, is the beefing shit. Beefing this one and beefing, because, you know, everybody was running cool. I mean, East Coast, West Coast, they was cool. Everybody had their own style. But when Suge came in the game, it's more like all that beef, and you had beefing, but it was like, small beef. But this shit, it was like mostly a lot of beefing, man, in the songs and shit. And then so, that shit would sell records. That's what they wanted. All that beefing shit. It got really bad. Now you see how it is now. You always got beef, but damn, that was the biggest beef there was right there. So far that I know of. It changed the game.
Yeah, it's like shit, motherfucker. Like when that song came out, that motherfucker hit the pavement hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, bro, which one was like, man, hold on, man. Like, check this out. I don't know what y'all niggas doing, but on this West Coast, nigga, this how niggas popping it. Nigga, on the real, at that time, niggas had diss songs or whatever the case may be, it was whatever, but a nigga be on some nigga, my name is Mac. I don't give a fuck. Your flows is whack. And a nigga come back like, oh, my flows is whack? Nigga, you outdated. But what the fuck is up with your cadence? Nigga, right. Like, bro, hold on. They just back. They talking about the flow and nigga, your mom's got a big toe, nigga, that looks like the motherfucking Jimmy. What the fuck? He's like, oh, nigga, my mom's big toe. Nigga, well, what about your mom's titties? Nigga, them motherfuckers sleepy as fuck, dog. Motherfuckers come around, shoot them up, dog. Nigga, like, these niggas, they just battle rapping like they capping and shit. Like,
yeah.
You see what I'm saying? They didn't even, nigga, but when Pac came with the, nigga, first off, fuck your bitch and the clique you claim, West Side, when we ride, we'll quit. Oh my, bruh, somebody's about to die, nigga. You hear how this nigga? You claiming to be a cheater, but I fucked your wife, nigga. What? Oh my god, bro, what's going on? I'm about to go beat this bitch ass. You done fuck Pac? You seen what happened in the movie? That nigga beat the dough down. Bitch, you fuck Pac.
I'm telling you, man, that's what changed the game. Records, man. That's what started selling records. The beefing. Niggas was hot, man. They was hot. It got serious, I was like, damn, this is going to end up ugly. And a lot of times it did.
I'm trying to tell you, man, nigga, hey, nigga, when them diss songs dropped, nigga, that shit shook they stupid ass. That shit shook they stupid ass.
Hey,
so he like, hey, man, bro.
He basically took the gloves off.
He like, yeah, like, bro, that was a low blow right there, bro. That was a low blow right there.
Yeah. I mean, I know in my neighborhood, everybody was like, hey, you hear the latest blah, blah, blah? People sitting around listening to it and playing the shit out of it. And I'm like, oh, man, this is going to get ugly real fast, Because it's like every, certain things, you had the beefing, but certain things was off limits. Nope, not anymore. Not anymore.
And talking about killing members of the Bad Boy label, yes, sir. He says, as the crew, the record label, the staff, significantly anybody who was a part of the crew he mentioned, he says, yes, sir. And would that include as part of the crew, meaning anybody associated Bad Boy Records? He says, yes, sir. And now it's part of the hip hop culture, and you're aware. You mentioned that it was still talked about as one of the best diss records. Is dissing or disrespecting other artists part of the hip hop culture, if you're aware? He replies, he says, it doesn't happen as often as you would think, but it does happen, yes, sir. And we had Idi Amin, Malcolm Greenidge testify in the case. Well, were you aware of Malcolm Greenidge being associated with Tupac Shakur? He says, yes, sir. He says, a part of that particular song, Hit 'Em Up? He says, yes, sir. Also, to your knowledge, was he a close associate with Mr. Shakur? He says, I believe so, yes, sir. Yeah, I know, yes, sir. Now I want to get to another award show, the Soul Train Awards in 1996. You at the Soul Train Awards? He says, yes, sir. Where was the Soul Train Awards? It was at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, California. Shrine Auditorium. And to your knowledge, was Bad Boy, the record label, were they also expected to be at the Soul Train Awards? He says, yes, sir. Can you tell us what you experienced leading up to the Soul Train Awards? He says, well, there was some back and forth regarding, who was going to open up the award show. Well, Mr. Cornelius elected to go with Biggie Smalls to open the show. So Mr. Knight pulled Mr. Shakur from performing at that particular show. However, he convinced Mr. Knight to have Mr. Shakur come, and he would be very happy. That was his exact words that I heard him tell him. So was there a decision to actually attend the show? He says, yes, sir. As this was in March of 1996, he says, yes, sir. And so how many people arrive or go to the Soul Train Awards from Death Row? On that particular night, we had about 50 to 60 associates. And by 50 to 60 associates, I assume some of them people are working for you in the Right Way Protective Services, right? He says, yeah, actually that night, we only had about 2 or 3 guys there. So who made up the 50 to 60? A few artists, maybe 8 to 10 of them, and the others were gang members from the Compton area, not just Mob Piru, but from Piru areas in the city of Compton. So all blood sets. Pirus is what we call them in Compton. Okay, Piru sets. He says, yes, sir, it's the same as Bloods. Is it communicated that you are going to enter the award show, whether from the front or the back, or how does that work? So our intention initially was all to go through the back gate, a private entryway, the back where they have motorhomes and where artists come out. They have little dressing rooms and stuff like that, and very limited parking space. But I got a heads up and played a little double agent that day, and that they were planning on being disruptive at the award show. And when you say they, do you mean the members of the Pirus who were showing up or planning to show up at the Soul Train Awards? Yeah, with us, with Death Row Records, yes, sir. And so I knew the head of security at the Shrine, and I tipped them off what was about to happen and only allowed a limited amount of people, in which they did. And so who was allowed through the artist's interest or in the backstage? It was Mr. Knight, Mr. Shakur, and he had about 3 or 4 members of the Outlaws, which would be Mr. Edie, Malcolm Green, I believe, Malcolm Greenidge, and 2 other members. They were singing artists named Danny Boy. They were in a Hummer with Mr. Knight. Myself and Frank Alexander, which was Mr. Shakur's primary security, was trailing behind him, and I was riding in the passenger seat of Mr. Alexander's vehicle. I'm going to fast forward in this event a little bit. At some point, there was a confrontation between Death Row Records and Bad Boy Records, or backstage of a show. He says, yes, sir. So what happened was, like I said, they elected to have Biggie Smalls or Mr. Wallace perform. And while they were leaving, they were planning on leaving probably because they knew that Death Row was coming. I don't know, but they were planning on leaving. As we're going into the auditorium or exiting our vehicles, we go into the auditorium, they're coming out. So I guess it was just a bad timing, and there was an argument that followed by a little of gunplay or a pointing. So who was the argument between? He says Mr. Shakur was the most vocal, Mr. Wallace, and then his entourage. As you speak about Mr. Wallace's entourage there, were there any members you had mentioned earlier, Southside Crips doing security for Bad Boy? Were there any members of the Southside Crips with Mr. Wallace during this incident? He says, yes, there was approximately 10 to 15 gentlemen that were exiting.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical products. It's Amazon's other company.
I noticed about 8 to 9 that were known from the city of Compton, my law enforcement days. And I did notice one particular individual. And what particular individual did you notice? Mr. Davis, Mr. Keith Davis, or Dwayne Davis? Mr. Davis go by a nickname that you're aware of? He says, yes, sir. He says, what's that nickname? Keefy D. And is it fair to say that you knew Mr. Davis to be a member of the Southside Compton Crips during this period? He says, yes, sir. He says, I mainly knew him as a gang member, but mainly knew because he was a major drug player in our city. Okay, and so he was with somebody that was common knowledge within your city that Mr. Davis wasn't necessarily a shooter as much as somebody who dealt narcotics. He says, correct. Now I'm going to show you grand jury exhibit number 2. It's on the monitor. Do you recognize the person depicted in grand jury exhibit number 2? He says, yes, sir. He says, who is that? That's Keefy Davis. I knew him by his moniker, but I believe his correct name is Dwayne Keith Davis. You knew him as Keefy D? He says, Keefy D, yes. You mentioned that there was a gunplay in this incident. It's fair to say that you did not see Mr. Davis with a firearm during that event. No, I didn't see him with a firearm. And nobody actually shot a firearm during this event. He says, no, just a gentleman brandished a weapon. And the gentleman associated with Bad Boy label, or was this with the Death Row label? Definitely Bad Boy record label. He was standing next to in the area with Mr. Davis in the area of Mr. Wallace. Okay, can you tell us about what happened? What exactly happened? So as we, like I said, getting out the vehicles, exiting the vehicles to go where they were coming out, immediately she noticed them and started to yell towards them. At that time, I'm next to Shakur. A gentleman brought out his gun from his waist, but he never raised the gun, but I did. So one of the people associated with Bad Boy Records brandished a firearm but did not point it at anybody. He says, correct. And you did what you do as a result of being security, right? He says, yes, sir. He says, what did you do as a result of seeing this? He says, I jumped out of my car and I pretty much was on top of it, in my words. I pointed my gun towards the gentleman with the gun and begged him not to point that gun or raise his gun. Did the situation resolve without any shots being fired? He says, yes, sir. They took off and ran toward the streets of the parking lot. I'll strike that. All right, I'm going to fast forward to Vegas. Okay, was it common for Death Row Records to come out of Vegas for Mike Tyson's fights? Yes, sir. Come out typically with Death Row Records for these fights? Says, yes, sir. He says, how many fights would you say you went out to prior to this incident? He said 3. Now we're here, all leading up to this time. We're talking about September 7th, 1996. Okay, leading up to this time, we have the Soul Train Awards, March of 1996, and now we have the Tyson fight, September of 1996. He says, yes, sir. And he says, is it fair to say the hostilities between Bad Boy Records are still going on or maybe even increasing? It was major because of that song, Hit 'Em Up, had been released earlier, but not on the initial album. It was released in February, and it kind of hit the streets around April or May, and it was making a lot of noise. And then it's fair to say that during that time, as far as you know, that the Southside Crips were doing work for Bad Boy Records. He says, yes, sir. He says, is it fair to say during that time, Death Row is still affiliating themselves with Mob Piru? Yes, sir. Now, initially, when you go out to Vegas, what were you responsible for the Tyson/Selden fight, September of 1996? He says, you know me, I like patting myself on the back and saying everything other than getting the rooms and getting everything ready. But I was pretty much just point-to guy or go-to guy, you know, in the streets. Like I said, not in the office, but in his office, his assistants will pretty much communicate everything to me because it was hard to get a hold of Mr. Knight. But my main responsibility that night and my biggest concern on my plate was getting to the club. Club 662 ready for Shakur, Mr. Knight, and the entourage and everybody to come in and get in there successfully. And we had an issue trying to get our permits and licensing. All of that, we were trying to get to the point where we had a good showing for those people involved. So it's fair to say, largely you were responsible for logistics and security. He says, yes, sir. So now for the people who were coming out to the Las Vegas fight, it would be Suge. Is it fair to say? He says, of course. Mr. Shakur, yes, sir. We had talked a little bit about the rap group Outlaws. Was it your expectation that they were coming out that weekend? He says, a couple of them, because a couple of them was too young, and I think only 2 of them came that was in the group. He says, okay, then, you know, Suge, some of his, they call homeboys, come out as well. He says, yes. Amongst those homeboys, are you familiar with the moniker Neckbone? He says, yes, sir. He says, who is that? He says, Roger Williams. And did you know him to be a Mob Piru member? He says, yes, sir. And then Buntry, are you familiar with somebody that went by Buntry? He says, yes, sir. He says, who is that? He says, Alton McDonald. And was he a Mob Piru member? He says, yes, sir. And was he out there? Yeah, out there in 96. He says, yes, sir. So, and in September of 96, and did you know somebody by the name of Mob James? He says, yes, sir. And what was his true name? James McDonald. And was he also out there for the weekend of 96? He says, yes, sir. And was he also affiliated with the Mob Piru? He says, yes, sir. He says, do you know somebody by the name of Trayvon Lane? He says, yes, sir. He says, what's his nickname if you know? Trey or Youngster? We call him Youngster. Probably in the streets, they just refer to him as Trey. He's somebody that also came out there for the fight. He says, yes, sir. Was he also affiliated with the Mob Piru? Yes, sir. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit about Mr. Lane. We've heard of the incident that allegedly occurred at the Lakewood Mall prior to the fight of September of 96. Is that right? Yes, sir. He says, were you there? He says, where, the fight at the mall? He says, no, sorry. But had you become aware of this idea of Mr. Lane's chain being taken from? He said, attempted to be taken from him. He says, okay, can you tell us a little bit about, were you familiar with those death row chains? He says, yes, sir. The death row chains were gifted to all of us as Christmas gifts that were considered real close to Mr. Knight. We got them in December of 1995, Christmas, and there were different variations of them. That one is mine. Okay, for the record, I've got to clean up the record. I put it on the monitor, showing Mr. Wright's exhibit number 41. Can you tell us what you're looking at in grand jury exhibit number 41? He says, a death row chain, one variant to the death row chain that were gifted by Mr. Knight as Christmas gifts to certain artists and certain people that he would consider his staff. As you said, I think you had said specifically in grand jury exhibit number 41, is this your chain? Is that right, your medallion? I could have sworn I gave that picture because I recognized the background. I know because they had different variants of diamonds. I think Mr. Ladd must have provided that to you all. If not, then somehow you got it. Fair to say you recognize this as being a death row medallion. He says, yes, sir. Did Mr. Knight give these chains to just anybody, or did you have to be somebody close and meaningful to death row records or to him? He says, yes. Like there were different variants. I would like to explain. For some on the records part, the death row doesn't have diamonds. Some of them are all diamond, even the bezel, like his main artist, Mr. Shakur and Snoop Dogg. Mr. Knight had a pretty big one. His was bigger and more diamond out as well. The ones that Mr. Lane and them had, it's just diamonds. It was just diamonds. It wasn't on the death row in the records. It was just the man. It was supposed to be an electric chair, a guy sitting on an electric chair because we're on death row. And that's how Mr. Lane and his guys, I will call homeboys, their chains were done. It was only about 6 to 8 of them that had it. Maybe 4 artists, maybe 4 to 5 artists, maybe a little bit more. 6 artists that had them. Is it fair to say that Death Row and Mr. Knight, Mr. Shakur, even took a lot of pride in having these Death Row chains? Yes, sir. Is it also fair to say that if somebody was trying to take a chain, it will be an ultimate sign of disrespect? Yeah, very much so. Even would catch a lot of flack for not coming back with our chain. So what would happen if someone had their chain taken away from them? To us or to the person who did it? Well, but first to you, what would happen to you? If you came back and you didn't have your death row chain, would you lose status, or what would you face within the group? He says hazing. He says hazing. Okay. A lot of hazing, I think will happen to the ones that eventually later, because he started giving out more and they would lose them and get into fights behind them. They got hazed. Nothing major, but just major hazing. And how would members of Death Row feel about someone trying to steal their chain, especially somebody who was a homeboy? Yeah, we had heard that there was a bounty on him, so we were all on alert. I didn't wear mine out. If I went in the entourage or something like that, I just didn't need the drama. And so to lose one back at that time, if it would have, you would have had to probably retaliate in some type of way. Not the artist or myself, but definitely the homeboys. Is that safe to say that that's particularly true if somebody's trying to take a chain from a homeboy? Yeah, that would definitely have to prove their status. So I guess you're right. They might have been disowned or something if there wasn't any retaliation or something behind losing their chain. Now, you obviously heard a lot of talk. It's common knowledge that there was an incident at the Lakewood Mall prior to the Tyson fight that involved Trayvon Lane. Is that right? He says, yes, sir. Was Suge Knight aware of the incident that somebody attempted to take Trayvon's chain from him? He says, yeah. I don't know if it was June or May when it happened. It was only like a couple of months prior to the incident at the MGM that his chain was. We always got the word attempted. Don't know if Mr. Knight gave him one. There's evidence that it was taken. Mr. Knight may have wanted to save face. I know he still claimed to always still have his chain. Even to this day, I see him with a chain. All right, but in terms of you, Mr. Knight and Mr. Shakur were aware that somebody at least attempted to take Trayvon's chain during that Lakewood Mall incident. It was very known around the label, yes, sir. Is it fair to say this? Were they aware that you were aware that it was that people associated with the Southside Crips, that they was the ones allegedly responsible for trying to take away or actually take away that Death Row chain? He says, yes, sir. And did you have some type of, amongst the label, was there a person in particular that all felt that they might be responsible for taking the chain off Trayvon Lane? I don't know if I learned that later. Okay, so if you don't know, we'll move on. He says, all right. So you got Trayvon, who was involved in the incident at the Lakewood Mall. You got Shakur. You got several members of the Mob Pop Rule. You got Mr. Knight planning on coming to Vegas. Is that right? That's correct, sir. And did you come with them or did you come before? He says, I came the day before Friday. There was a class. Let me guide this to make it a little bit clearer. So you got there before them. You said part of the things you were concerned about was logistics, particularly associated with the club. Is that right? He says, yes, sir. And what club were you talking about? He says, Club 662. He was trying to own the club. I don't know if it was at some point the owner of the club. What was the project out there? Do you come out to meet him with an attorney to talk about running the club and conforming to the Nevada regulations as it relates to running the club? He says, yes, sir. And what was the name of the attorney? He says, George Callis. And when you a part of coming out here early, did you have your security folks out here early as well? He says, yes, sir. Was that because you learned you needed a work card and able to work the club? He says, yes, sir. He says, did you have to take a class associated with getting the work card? He says, yes, sir. He says, did you and your people take the class? He says, my people did. I didn't go. All right. And were you aware, was there supposed to be a big event at Club 662 Saturday night, the night of the Tyson-Bruce Seldon fight? He says, yes, sir. He says it was a club where we did live performances or shows, but mainly it was a bar and a dance club. He says, okay, where was it located? 1700. I don't know if it was 1701 or 1700 from Lingo. And how far was it away from the strip? He says, I guess 17 blocks. He says, you don't remember? He says, yeah, 1700. So then was part of your concern about running the club the concern that you wanted it to be in much conformity with the statutes and regulations that it could keep up this club running? He says, yes, sir. He says, was the club new at the time or was it old? He says, well, it's been a club prior, I guess. There were some previous owners. Like I said, I was learning them. But the main reason why we had got Mr. Kellis assumed that we were going to get scrutinized that night heavily and that we should be on point, and this is how we would do things. And real shortly, Mr. Knight or whoever had, because I don't know to this part today, was going to put the name of the club into, it should be getting finalized if everything went well, because it was not a club that Mr. Knight at the time opened up every night or every weekend or so. It only opened under his management. So I guess it would be correct. 8 times, which would have been Friday, Saturday on those 4 previous fight nights that had been mentioned. And we also shot 1 music video that wasn't open to the public for a St. Ives beer and liquor commercial. We shot a video there. It was only 1 time that club ever opened during Mrs. Knight's reign. Was it your understanding the hope was for this night that it would go successful and you guys would become the proper certification and be allowed to club more and do more business at Club 662? To put in your correct words, but yes, sir. So now you were given any instructions as to whether or not you all should be or allowed to have firearms in the club or in the city while you were trying to get this business deal down in the meeting? So either myself or Mr. Kellis is in the meeting I had with all my security, who were mainly off-duty or retired police officers. And I informed him that I forgot who it was, but I know I echoed it if I wasn't the one who said it, banned them from having their firearms on them or inside the nightclub. If they had a problem with it, then don't come to work. All right, now I'm trying to focus your attention to the day of the Tyson-Seldon fight. So we were on Friday. Now we're moving on to Saturday, the day of the fight. Okay, do you recall where you guys were staying? At the Luxor Hotel, And where was everybody else associated with Death Row going to stay? The staff, the working staff, and the artists. But Mr. Knight and about 3 of his friends, Mr. Knight had just purchased a home out here about 4 months prior. And you know he had got a lot of renovation done to it. As a matter of fact, we were having the next day a big family reunion, meaning Sunday, where we're planning to have a lot of his family members out, go to the club, of course. We're going to have a big family reunion. He was giving a big party because he wanted to show off his house. Maybe about 4 of those people were going to be at that house.
Someone once said that being a stranger in a strange land is a curse. Whoever it
house. But so the artists like Shakur, the Outlaws, other artists that were coming out, they were staying at the Luxor. Even myself, I had a room at the Luxor. You were at the Luxor as well? Yes. And so other staff and security, they were staying at the Luxor as well? Yes, sir. Okay, what time do you recall the fight was supposed to start? Generally 7:30 to 8 o'clock. Is this when you want to be over there? And when did Mr. Shakur and Mr. Knight arrive, if you know? Well, at the Luxor. Are you driving from LA? Yeah. About 3-ish, 4 p.m. that day, yes, sir. And did you see them when they arrived? I seen Mr. Shakur for sure. I think Mr. Knight just came by the hotel. I don't remember him getting out or anything because it was like he was trying to get to the house. It was a little, rush. We was always running late, always behind time. But he didn't get out and come in the hotel and walk around and mingle. Would you describe this night as being organized or unorganized? My side, I was the logistic guy, so I guess it would be my fault. It would have kind of been an unorganized crew. Was it your intention to be at the fight that night? Potentially, yes, sir. What happened? What happened? Were you able to go to the fight? I didn't go because I had issues at the club, of course. All right, I didn't go because of issues at the club, of course. And us being unorganized, we're even to the fact that Mr. Shakur called me looking for Mr. Knight, as everyone always did. And he pretty much informed me that he's tired of going to the fight late, because Mike Tyson's fights usually be over then in the first round. And even with Mr. Shakur, his music, he had rapped a song for him to enter the ring in, and he wanted to be there. And he and his security caught a cab over to the fight. Mr. Shakur took a cab to the MGM Grand for the fight. Yes, sir, from the Luxor. You mentioned his security. Do you recall his security then? Yes, sir. Who was that? Mr. Frank. His name was Frank Alexander. All right. So that's the same person you talked about earlier. At the Soul Train, yes, sir. Yes, okay. So when Mr. Shakur and Mr. Alexander are off to the MGM Grand, do you ever make it to the MGM Grand at all? I went by there, saw that parking, and we had little Nextel walkie-talkies. I was getting a lot of feedback and issues with my security, and I just elected to go to the club to make sure everything was in order at the club. Is it fair to say your focus was executing the club to go well? Yes. And were you aware or was not aware that it was supposed to be a performance at that club that night? Yes, sir. Who was supposed to perform that night? Well, I know an artist we had just signed from Bad Boy Records. Bad Boy, he had just started up Death Row East. His name was Craig Mack. He was going to perform there. Guy who worked out because he had done some community service that was needed. We were going to do some community service, and they were donating some of the proceeds to this boxer foundation from the Las Vegas Police Department. And so Mr. Shakur was going to be the one to perform. Okay, all right. And so the night you spent most of your evening at Club 662 while Mr. Shakur, Mr. Knight, and some of the entourage were at the MGM. Yes, sir. So you don't see the fight. You don't go in at all. Yes, sir. Correct. So while you're working the logistics at Club 662, how is everything going as the evening progresses? Kind of proud finally working the way it was supposed to work the club, as far as the crowd control outside, because we had contracted Las Vegas Police Department. I don't know if it was on duty or off duty, officers, but they were in uniform to control the parking lot and crowd control from the door on. And my security had it from inside the door on, and it was very organized. Metro Police did a good job that night. At some point, did you see some people come to you and say, hey, something actually going wrong that night? Yeah. Can you tell me about that? Don't know the approximate time. I guess around 11 somewhere. Two gentlemen that we talked about earlier, Roger Williams, a.k.a. Neckbone, Alton McDonald, a.k.a. Buntry, like country, but with the B, came inside the club and was like, Reggie, Suge and Pac just got shot down the street. I initially was thinking they were tripping because I wasn't with Suge, and Suge told y'all to come up here and tell me that. And they were like, no, we're serious. By this time, Mr. Kellesis was near me. George Kellesis, the attorney, he kind of confirmed to me. He was like, yeah. So, and I'm also seeing a few of the Las Vegas Police Department that was working the door or working the parking lot. They're visiting or maybe visiting the guys that were working. I don't know, but they're leaving with lights and sirens going towards the area. So I kind of knew about that time. So it was true. Prior to hearing from Buntry and Neckbone that Suge and Tupac had been shot, had you heard anything about a fight at the MGM or Southside? An issue with the Southside Crips at all? He says nothing. That's one problem I had with my security, Mr. Alexander. He didn't notify me on what transpired, but he said his walkie-talkie, we had Nextels back then where you could operate with like two-way radios. They had a dual. It would be a phone or it could be a walkie-talkie, but he didn't notify me. But this was his first day back from being off from like a month, and he said his walkie-talkie, he hadn't got his walkie-talkie or it was dead, something like that. But no one told me what happened, which to be honest, a fight, it was kind of common. Yeah, I was going to follow up a question, was working doing security for Death Row Records by this time for about a year and a half, having moonlight for, years before were fights common. He said kind of common. Was it something that you were overly concerned about if you heard that it was a fight? If it would have been explained to me in the magnitude, yes, it was. Or just that, hey, they got in a fight with some guys at the MGM? No. So you're talking about the magnitude of who it was. Did you later come to learn that the person the fight was with was Orlando Anderson? Yes, sir. And at that time, were you aware that Mr. Anderson was a member of the Southside Crips? Yes, sir. And would it give you a concern? Somebody who knew gangs from growing up in Compton, gangs from Patrol, gangs that were just working with Death Row, would it have given you some concern that there was some altercation with a significant member of the Southside Crips? Yes, sir. Now, when Buntry and Nutbone come out, do you ever see their car? Yes, sir. Do you notice anything different about their car when you last saw it? Yes, sir. He says, what do you notice? There was a bullet in the left fender of his black Toyota Spatra. And prior to that incident or prior to seeing that car that night, have you ever noticed the bullet hole? He said, no, sir. And was it to your common knowledge that it was common practice for guys from the neighborhood gang members to immediately fix bullet holes in their vehicles? You don't drive with a car that has bullet holes in it, mainly not so much for embarrassment of the gunshot, but because the police could potentially harass you a little more, because generally they believe, and I believe, if a police officer, when I see someone just recently shot at and they carry a gun to protect themselves, one, either they have issues with somebody, or two, maybe in fear, I'd rather be judged than carried. So we talked at the beginning that your father, Reggie Wright Sr., was a lieutenant in the gang unit right around this time. Is that fair to say? He says yes. So was he in Vegas or was he in Compton during this time, during that night of the shooting? No, he was in Compton. Well, I guess he was at home. You don't know, but to your knowledge, he wasn't in Vegas. No, he wasn't in Vegas. Where did you go after the shooting? Did you ultimately make your way down to UMC? Yes, sir. Did you drive there or did someone else drive you there? No, the attorney, George Callias, because I didn't know my way around Vegas, but he drove me to the hospital. And during this time, do you see Mr. Knight? He says, yes. About 2 hours probably after the shooting, I seen him in the emergency room at the hospital. Is it fair to say that he survived the shooting? Yes. To your recollection, did he stay there for a few days or was he released that night? No, he left. I left prior to him getting released, but I was back at his house around 7 a.m. that morning and he was there. And Mr. Shakur, was he still in the hospital? Yes, sir. Were there a lot of friends, associates, and people who were actually at the incident gathering at the hospital while Mr. Shakur was being treated? Yes, definitely later. Not initially upon my arrival, but during that night, yes, sir. And were they upset? Very. Were they emotional? Very. Would it be fair to say or unfair to say that they were under the stress of what they had experienced of Mr. Shakur getting shot at? I guess they would be. That's fair. Did you talk to any of these people about what happened? Without getting to the details of what they said that you talked to them. Tension was up. The artists, the people, not the guys, meaning the homeboys. Maybe talk to them a little later. It was mainly like the people from the club that heard about it and started filtering themselves over, which would have been people that didn't know too much. Yeah. Ultimately, did you talk to some of the homeboys and the artists about what had gone on? Yes. He says, as a result of talking to the homeboys and the artists, did you call your father? He says, yes. Why did you call your father? Well, initially, I just called him to tell him, hey, Tupac and Suge were just shot. Now, I know probably later, I'm sure I was calling, talking to him all that night, but I remember relaying something to him. And later that night, meaning around 3, 4, 5 o'clock, somewhere around that evening, did you feel the need to reply information to your father? Yes, because I learned regarding the incident that happened at the MGM that it had something to do with the gentleman from the Southside Crips. And I knew the gentlemen from that neighborhood that were associated with us, the Mob Power Rules in the Lotus Park, were very upset about it. Were you concerned that there will be a subsequent violence in Compton as a result of this happening in Vegas? Yes, sir. And contacting your father, who was a lieutenant of the gang unit, seemed like information he should know. Yes, sir. And in the course of the 27 years since the shooting September 6, 1996, there have been all sort of theories on who was responsible for shooting Tupac. You're aware of that, right? Yes, sir. I have to ask you, are you responsible in any way for shooting and killing Mr. Shakur? No, sir. Finally, is this true that in 2017, you were convicted of a felony sales of marijuana? Yes, sir. And you were convicted of another felony as well, money laundering associated with the sales of marijuana. And those felonies are in federal court. Is that fair? He says yes. That's all we got.
This nigga, he just told, he just told everything. Like, bro, you know you out of pocket, right? You in there telling everything, like, bro, and this is public record that you out here snitching like that.
Yep.
This is public record.
Concerned for his safety. I hate to say it, but I am concerned for his safety. I mean, sometimes when you talk too much, it's not good, you know. This, especially when you involved with, you know, whatever it is you're involved with. You know, I'm just like, dude. Sometimes you just gotta like act like you don't know. You know.
Man, that nigga just told everything.
Woo.
Let's get into this story, though, man. Tequila Sutter. We about to get into it, man. This gangland, man. Hey, that nigga is a real rat. And it seemed like it was snitches on both sides. But y'all know what it is, man. We gonna talk about it, this gangland.
On this episode of Black Girl Gone, we tell the story of Tequila Sutter, a 26-year-old woman who was murdered on February 15th, 2014 in Lackawanna, New York. The day she was found, Tequila was supposed to attend church, but when her friend arrived to pick her up, she didn't answer the door. When her friend gained access to the apartment, Tequila was found in her bedroom, dead. She had been stabbed 39 times. Immediately, investigators believed that Tequila was killed by someone close to her. As they took a closer look at the people in Tequila's life, it didn't take them long to identify who that person was. This is Tequila's story. Tequila Sutter was born on November 13, 1987 in Oakland, California. But when she was still really young, her family moved to New York State. When they first moved, they lived in New Fame, New York, but eventually moved to a nearby town called Lockport, where they settled. For elementary school, Tequila attended Anna Merritt Elementary School and then North Park Junior High. After that, she attended Lockport High School, where she graduated from. The people closest to her described her as a caring, compassionate person who was born a leader. After she graduated from high school, Tequila began working at a local nursing home as a dietary aide, and then she later worked at a daycare. According to her family, working with children was her true passion. Eventually, that passion led her to Lackawanna, where she moved and began working at Baker Victory Services, where she worked as both a mentor and a counselor for the young people the program served. Outside of work, Tequila also attended church regularly and was an active member of her church community. She led praise and worship and danced, and, of course, because of her love for children, participated in the children's ministry also. She was someone who people could depend on, especially her church family. At some point, Tequila decided that she wanted to go back to college. She decided that she would major in criminal justice and child psychology. In the beginning of 2014, by all accounts, Tequila was living a happy life in Lackawanna, working and going to school and church. Although there isn't much information about Tequila's personal life, we do know that at the time she was dating a young man named Damoni Hall. It's not clear how or when the two met, but Damoni was a few years younger than Tequila. But he was described by people who knew him as a nice young man who attended church regularly. Tequila was living a pretty normal, seemingly uneventful life when 2014 started. But in February of that year, everything changed. On Friday, February 14th, 2014, Tequila discovered some suspicious activity on her bank account. There were withdrawals that she did not recognize, and she suspected that it was fraud. And so at around 3:30 p.m. on the 14th, Tequila contacted the Lackawanna Police Department to report the suspicious activity. The detective who answered her phone call said that he was preparing to leave for the weekend, and so when he spoke to Tequila, he told her that he would follow up with her on Monday. The fact that Tequila contacted the police is a clear indication that she did not think that this withdrawal was some sort of accident or a mistake. She was concerned enough about it to call the police right away. On Sunday, February 16th, 2014, Tequila was supposed to go to church as she always did on Sunday. A friend of hers that also attended the same church was going to pick her up so they could drive together. Her girlfriend arrived that morning to pick Tequila up, but when she got to her home and knocked on the door, Tequila didn't answer. She tried to call her phone, but there was still no answer. Almost immediately, she knew that something was wrong because Tequila never missed church. She knew that she was going to be there to pick her up, and so she would have been ready. The fact that she wasn't answering the door or her phone was alarming. So after not being able to get a hold of Tequila, her friend decided to call her brother. At the time, her brother was working for Tequila's landlord, and he had a key to the apartment. She told him that Tequila wasn't answering the phone and asked him to come over there to let her in so that she could check on her. When the friend's brother got to the apartment, he knocked on the door, but there was still no answer. And so he used his key and unlocked the door. He entered the apartment and walked to where Tequila's bedroom was. And that's where he found her, lying face down on the floor, covered in blood. Her friend's brother called 911. He told the 911 operator that he found Tequila on the floor and there was blood everywhere. When police arrived at Tequila's apartment, it was obvious that she had been murdered. The blood around her had dried, indicating that she had been lying there for several hours before she was found. When detectives took a closer look at Tequila's body, they could see that she had been stabbed multiple times, with a lot of the wounds concentrated around her neck. They could tell right away that this was a brutal murder, and it looked personal. Now, despite the fact that there was a significant amount of blood around Tequila's body, detectives said that they found it suspicious that there wasn't visible blood any other place in the apartment. With so many stab wounds, investigators believe that there should be more blood. And so, as a part of their investigation of the crime scene, they sprayed luminol in different places around the apartment. If you don't know what luminol is, it's a chemical that, when placed under UV light, can reveal blood, even after it's been cleaned up. And so, when the luminol is sprayed in the bathroom, it lit up. In 2021, Tequila's story was featured on ID channel's See No Evil, and in that episode, they showed the actual crime scene photos from the bathroom, and you can clearly see what looks like bloody shoe prints all over the bathroom floor. After the luminol was tested, and investigators now knew that whoever murdered Tequila had attempted to clean up the scene. And that was confirmation that this was not a random crime. They knew from the stab wounds that this was likely personal. And so a attempted cleanup only added to that theory. But the cleanup also meant that there was evidence that was gone. And that would ultimately make it more difficult for the investigators to find the killer. After processing the crime scene, detectives turned to neighbors of Tequila's to see if anyone had seen or heard anything. There was also a health center near the apartment that had surveillance cameras outside. Detectives visited the clinic to review their cameras, but unfortunately, the angle didn't capture anything outside Tequila's apartment. With no witnesses and no surveillance footage, detectives knew that they were going to have to take a deep dive into Tequila's life to see if there was anyone she knew who may have wanted to kill her. When the autopsy was performed, it was determined that Tequila had been stabbed 39 times. it was overkill, and whoever had done it had wanted to make sure that she died. The question was, who hated her enough to stab her that many times? Detectives found out that Tequila had been dating Damoni. Coincidentally, several of the police officers in Lackawanna knew him when he was a basketball player in high school and knew him to be quiet. But him being Tequila's boyfriend meant that they needed to speak to him to see what he knew. And so they contacted Damoni and he agreed to come into the police station and speak to them. Now, on the episode of See No Evil, they show parts of the interview. In the footage, Damoni appears calm, and one of the detectives said that he was polite. He tells them that he was at church when he found out that something had happened to Tequila. He said a fellow member of the church tapped him on the shoulder and told him that they were going to pray because something had happened to her. Damoni said that the last time he saw Tequila was on February 15th, the day before her body was found. He admitted to detectives that they had been arguing and were basically breaking up. He told them that at about 4:30, he started to collect his things that he had at the apartment. He said that he was still trying to talk to her, telling her that they could still work things out. Damoni said that he told Tequila that he would be back in the morning to get the rest of his things because he didn't want to upset her. He said that he put some of his stuff in a bag and left the apartment at around 5:30 p.m. And when he last saw her, Tequila was on her phone. After leaving the apartment, Damoni said that he went down the street to a local store and bought a couple things. He said that he was trying to figure out where he was going to stay, and so he called a friend of his to ask for a ride because he didn't have money for a taxi. He said the friend picked him up and dropped him off at a bus station downtown, where he took a bus to a female friend's house where he stayed the night. While at the friend's house, Damoni said that he and Tequila were talking. They were communicating via text and Facebook, and Tequila was making it clear that she wanted to end their relationship. Damoni, however, was doing everything he could to change her mind. After police finished interviewing him, Damoni left the station, and detectives began to look into his alibi to see if they could corroborate what he had told them. The first thing they did was check the surveillance footage at the store where Damoni said he had gone after leaving Tequila's apartment. When they viewed the footage from inside the store, they saw Damoni entering at around the time he said. He had a black backpack on and he was carrying a white plastic bag. The footage captured him making purchases and then exiting the store. After they reviewed the footage, they next wanted to see the camera footage from the bus that Damoni said that he took after being dropped off. When investigators contacted the bus company to request the footage, they were told that it would take a few days before they could get it. Now, while investigators waited for the footage, they were able to obtain a copy of Tequila's phone records, and they were able to see and read the text between Tequila and Damoni, and it confirmed what Damoni told them. When the surveillance footage from the bus came back, that too corroborated his story. The footage showed him get on the bus where he said and then get off at the location he said he did. At that point, investigators had been able to confirm the things that Damoni told them, and so it looked like he had told them the truth. And so they began to focus their attention on other possible suspects. It was still early in the investigation, but investigators were having a hard time finding a motive. Why would someone want to kill Tequila? As the investigation continued, detectives and Tequila's family began to realize that their killer was closer to her than they knew.
Travis Kelce. Wow, you're Brian Halsey. Perfect payment history. I worship you, man.
It's all the Experian Smart Money debit card.
It has a digital checking account that can build credit without the debt.
I know!
Get your Experian Smart Money account through the free app.
On February 16th, 2014, 26-year-old Tequila Suter was found murdered inside her apartment in Lackawanna, New York. She had been stabbed 39 times. As the investigation began, detectives were having trouble finding their suspect and a motive until they started to take a closer look. In the days following Tequila's murder, investigators were having trouble finding a suspect or any leads that would point them towards a suspect. As word of her murder spread throughout the community, people who knew Tequila were shocked. She was someone who people knew to be kind and helpful. It was unimaginable that someone would come into her home and stab her 39 times. It didn't make sense, and neither her family or detectives could figure out why. With detectives hitting a dead end in those first few days, they decided to go and speak to Damoni's friend, the one whose house he said he stayed at on the 15th after he left Tequila's apartment. Even though surveillance footage had confirmed much of what he told detectives, with so few leads, they needed to make sure that Damoni had told them the whole truth. Detectives went over to the home of Damoni's friend to speak to her. Once there, they discovered that her cousin also lived with her, and so they asked both women if they would be willing to come to the station to speak to them about that night, and the women agreed. Once at the station, the women told detectives that Damoni had come there and spent the night, like he said, and he didn't leave until Sunday afternoon. The detectives asked if he had had anything with him when he arrived, and the women told detectives that he had a black backpack when he got to their place. But from the surveillance footage, detectives knew that Damoni had also been carrying a white plastic bag. But when they asked his friend and her cousin, she said that he did not have a white plastic bag when he got to their apartment. Detectives thought that it was odd that he had this plastic bag with him in every video they found of him on the 15th, but then when he arrived at his friend's house, he didn't have it. They, of course, had no way of knowing what was inside the bag or whether or not it was significant, but they also wanted to find the bag and see what was inside. They asked Damoni's friend if he had anything else with him, like a cell phone or any other personal belongings. And his friend told them that Damoni actually had two cell phones when he came over, one black and one white. The description of the white cell phone immediately sparked the detectives' interest because they had been unable to find Tequila's white cell phone. And Damoni, in his interview with them, had not mentioned a second cell phone. When investigators finished interviewing the friend and her cousin, they decided to go back to the surveillance footage from the bus and take a closer look at what Damoni was doing during the ride. When they look at the footage again, they could see what looked like a white cell phone in his hand. And once they saw that phone, Damoni became their prime suspect. They believed that he had lied to them about seeing Tequila last on her phone and that he had taken her phone from her apartment. They didn't know exactly why he had taken the phone, but they had a pretty good feeling about why. In order to find out more about the phone from Damoni, they brought him back in for questioning. They asked him about the cell phone, and he told them that when he got to the bus station that evening, that he had found it on the ground. They asked him where the phone was now, and he told them that it didn't work, and so he had thrown it away. The problem was, Damoni's friend and her cousin said that he had the phone when he got to their apartment and was using it all night. And so the detectives knew for sure that he was lying about the phone. At that point, the detectives interviewing him began to put pressure on Damoni to see if he would confess. But he denied that he killed Tequila. He maintained his story and said that he had nothing to do with what happened. After the police turned up the heat, Damoni asked for a lawyer. The detectives working the case were hoping that the pressure they were putting on him would get him to confess. At that point, they were 100% sure that he was their killer, but they did not have enough evidence to arrest him. Even if they could prove that the cell phone was in his possession, they needed more. And so, after interviewing Damoni for the second time, detectives turned their attention to the missing white plastic bag. They needed evidence that Damoni couldn't make an excuse for, and they believed that it was inside that bag. So investigators began searching the area near where Damoni had gotten off the bus. Since they knew that he had gotten off the bus with the bag, but did not arrive at the friend's house with it, meant that he had discarded it somewhere between. And so they searched every trash can and area where someone would discard trash. If they couldn't find the entire bag, they at least wanted to find the contents of the bag, or some of it, a smoking gun. Now, after finding nothing in the cans along the route to Damoni's friend's apartment, they decided to go there and look in the trash cans behind her building. When investigators opened the cans and take out one of the bags, underneath, they found the white plastic bag, identical to the one that Damoni had been seen carrying that night. When they took the bag out and opened it, inside, they found several items, all covered in blood, including a disposable mop head, men's clothing, and a woman's jacket. They also found 2 knives. On February 27th, 13 days after Tequila was brutally stabbed to death, Damoni Hall was arrested and charged with her murder. The detective's theory was that Tequila had confronted Damoni over the missing money from her account, and that they got into an argument that turned violent. And in a rage, Damoni grabbed a knife and stabbed Tequila to death. They then believed that he cleaned up the crime scene and then took her phone. After she was dead, they said that Damoni then used Tequila's phone to access Facebook and send messages to himself to make it appear as if he was talking to Tequila, when in fact, it was his attempt to create an alibi and give the appearance that she was still alive when he last saw her. After his arrest, detectives continued to search for Tequila's phone, and they ended up finding it, solidifying their theory of the case. After Damoni was arrested, it was a shock to those who knew him and Tequila. He was known as a quiet, church-going young man. He didn't seem like the type to do something like this. The prosecution, however, had overwhelming amounts of evidence against him. They not only had the cell phone and the records, they also had DNA on the bloody items found inside the plastic bag. They had a strong case. And so, instead of going to trial, in December 2014, Damoni Hall pled guilty to murdering Tequila. And in January 2015, he was sentenced to 20 years to life. He will be eligible for parole in 2034, and he's currently serving his sentence at Attica Prison. The murder of Tequila's suitor was a brutal one. I'm sure she never thought ending her relationship with Damoni would end with her life being taken. Although the detectives and prosecutors had their theories of why Damoni killed Tequila, it's not really clear why in that moment he decided to destroy so many lives. At 26 years old, Tequila had made such a lasting impact on the people who knew her and loved her, and what happened to her was not fair. She deserved so much more. Nothing that happened that night was worth her life, and for Damoni, it wasn't worth throwing his life away. But he is in prison, and justice in this case was served. Hopefully, knowing that her killer has been held accountable for what he did brings some comfort to Tequila's family and friends. May Tequila's suitor rest in peace. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube.
Damn, now look, this girl, she wasn't even bothering nobody. She just did her thing, was an adult, moved, was on her shit, was doing her own shit, was fucking with this weird ass nigga. This nigga started taking money out of her account. She called him out on it, and instead of taking accountability and either paying her back, or she had to stop fucking with you because she was about to call the police on your ass because she reported fraud. So now that she found out it's you, nigga, she don't want to fuck with you no more. So you that mad? Like how you got the audacity to want to kill her when you the one stole from her? So how you mad that she want to do something or press charges on you, nigga? That's weird.
Man, this motherfucker.
That's weird.
That's a lot of hate, man. That's a lot of hate. How the hell you? Wow, man. That's just. Damn. Damn, that's a stupid motherfucker, man.
I mean, what a dummy. What a dummy.
And he thought, you know what? He that's a person who thought he could just like do anything. You know what I mean? Damn.
Yeah, this is the thing, right? For a person to sit there and think like, how this bank shit work, right? Like they get all type of shit going on with that shit. Like, people can see what's going on, when money being spent, all that. Like, come on now, it's 20. Like, so I don't see how he thought he was really getting over when, bruh, she can see what's going on. And then when she called him out on this fraud, he want to act like he wasn't. Like, nigga, that's one thing I like, bro. How's you stealing from a motherfucker who will give you everything? That's crazy.
Yeah.
A motherfucker is stealing from a motherfucker who will give him everything.
Yeah. I don't know what. And these motherfuckers is crazy these days. You know what I'm saying? They get crazy as fuck.
You gonna steal from a motherfucker who gonna give you everything. She weird as fuck. I mean, he weird in a bitch. Like, man, come on, bro. She would have gave you anything. You in her bank account stealing? What, if that was you, what would you do if your husband was in your bank account stealing money?
Shit, I had to get a new car, get all that shit switched up, moving silent so a nigga don't know. And see the thing is sometimes when women have a little sneaky way of figuring shit out. And we fix shit. Nigga get all like, and then that way we know for sure that he done did it because we know what we know as far as what we have in our account. So me personally, I do the sneak thing and go, watch this. And if that nigga try to use that card, that shit be like not working, or because he had to get the card. You know what I mean? He had to get the card. How he got it, I don't know. But hey, find that card don't work no more. Sometimes they'll tell on themselves just by sitting there going, hey, you just act like you don't know. Because see, again, some people, they get violent. They get violent. Back in the day, I would have like yelled at them and shit. Nah, you just do shit quietly. And at that point, I probably like want to leave his ass because I mean that means you sneaking in my purse and getting shit, fucking up the program. You know what I'm saying? Because you don't know what that money is for. That fucks up the bill.
Exactly. And the nigga, he all up in it though. He didn't give a fuck.
No, he didn't.
Like, just think. This is the reason why this nigga killed her. Ain't that stupid?
Yeah, that's some evil shit right there. Fucking leech. He was leeching off of her ass.
Exactly. Ain't that stupid? Nigga, you killed her because you stole. You killed her because you stole?
Yeah. And she confronts your ass about it. And she probably wasn't mean to him, but she told she probably just said, look, she put her hoof down and said, no, 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 we can't do this.
Either you get the fuck out or I call the police on your motherfucking ass.
And he
Which
chose
one, nigga?
right.
Which one?
Yeah. He probably cheating on her and everything. He's probably a little scam. He was scum, man. Fucking scrub. My thing is get it out the mud just like a girl. The girl is getting it out the mud. All he had to do was ask, or maybe he asked and she said, no, I need to pay this. You know what I'm saying? So he decided to sneak and get what he thought was sneaking and getting a card and shit and pulling out money with, he probably stopped asking her and maybe she said something to him like, yo, man, well, go ahead and get a job or, try to make him responsible. It sounds like she would have been an uplifter. So she probably told him, you know what? You might think about getting a job because I can't keep giving you money, blah, blah, blah. We got to pay bills. I mean, were they living together or was she by herself? I didn't catch that. Matt.
Nah, I think they was living together. And then she
Okay.
kicked him out.
Yeah. Okay. So she had to pay. There was bills that need to be paid. How much she put in, I don't know. It sounded like nothing. But you know, my whole thing is, when we make this money, we have budgets, whether it's in our head or whether we write it down. We have budgets to maintain shit, right? And I find that a lot of people don't do that. So they don't know about the budgets and things. They think he think is she trying to be mean and not give him what he want, which really a real man wouldn't do that. But you know what I'm saying? You got some suckers out here. And yeah, she probably told him no. So he snuck and got it. Found out, boom. She let him go. Nah, nigga. We can't do business like this. And it's probably not the first time. You know what I'm saying? For her to call the police, most likely we would have to be more than once. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, usually the first time we think we don't spend too much or something, and then we try to figure it out. But if she sees it again, now we go into the police. You know what I mean? Me personally, I just changed my account and all that shit. Get a new card, put it in a new place. But he was going through her purse. And I'm glad she made that report because they had something going, something, you know what I mean? Something to go by besides just his bullshit, his dumbness.
Man, this is the thing. Well, man, you got a motherfucker like that stealing. The only thing you can do is tell them to get the fuck on before you beat their ass or something. Because
Right.
that's just, come on, bro. I
Yeah,
mean, come on, bro.
she can't trust him no more. And that when people do that, and again, like I said, the budget, trust, that's all out the window. You know, that's causing her to have to miss something that both of them, I mean, she making money for not just her, she making money for the household. So yeah, you can't trust him no more. He gotta go. That's blatant ass shit right there. That's a pretty much a no brainer. But you know, she didn't expect him to act her ass, and she probably voiced her opinion about the shit. You know, got in his ass and shit. You know, get the fuck out. His fucking crazy ass went and did what he did. No stupid motherfucker.
Just a thief.
Yeah, probably been doing it a long time. Now, them friends that he went to is probably his other chick. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm thinking. Might be wrong, but most likely that's his other chick. He probably had a side chick too.
You gotta be one bum ass nigga to want to steal and then spend it on a side bitch. That's ass backwards. You supposed to get from the side bitch and at least get to your man. Like what? Huh?
Yeah, okay, if you're gonna be a Mac, right?
Like, don't that make sense, nigga? If you gonna fuck around, nigga, don't it make sense to take from that bitch and give it to her? Like that
That's what
nigga doing the opposite.
you would think, but that's not how it go now. Maybe back in the day it was like that, but not anymore. You got a bunch of dumb motherfuckers who are like gutless, won't do this, won't do shit. You know, just go get a job, nigga. You know, shit, help her out. She over here loving you, you know, making sure you set, probably buying you shit, you know, making sure you straight, cooking you dinner and shit. You know, just got everything lined up for you. You know, and they want to do some heartless shit like that. That's just bad, man. Bad business. Fucking bad idiot. And it didn't have the sense to leave town. You know what I'm saying? You gonna do it's wicked. He just wicked, man. Wicked. Sad.
She get wicked. Mondi Robinson. Khalil Cook came home from Mexico and gave me Shanquilla iPhone and password. There was 400 text messages deleted from Shanquilla phone. I took the phone to the carrier and all 400 text messages came back up on the phone. Why would y'all delete dead woman phone messages? What did y'all try to hide? I did read some of the things y'all did to Shanquilla. This is how I know y'all murdered Shanquilla Robinson.
Mm. 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 Can anyone say Colt 45? Mm.
Mm-mm-mm.
Can anyone say Colt 45? It's just a drink. Mm. Oh my goodness.
Mm-mm.
Ooh-wee. Damn. Didn't I just say some shit about to pop off? Oh my goodness. Oh my. Let me reminisce over you, my God. Oh my goodness, man. It's gonna get ugly.
Come on, man.
Oh my God. So what else does she say?
That's what she said.
Woo!
That's what she said.
It ain't safe. It ain't safe. It ain't safe. It
I
ain't
said, let
safe.
me read it again. Khalil Cook came home from Mexico and gave me Shanquilla iPhone and password. There was 400 text messages that was deleted from Shanquilla's phone. I took the phone to the carrier. all 400 text messages came back up on the phone. Why would y'all delete a dead woman phone messages? What did y'all try to hide? I did read some things that y'all did to Shanquilla. That's how I know y'all murdered Shanquilla Robinson.
She went Wu-Tang on his ass. Oh my God. I hear old dirty already. Oh my God. Lord have mercy. That boy ain't safe. That boy ain't safe. And ain't no tell. I would love to know. Now I know that's you know. Oof. Woo. This motherfucker. Nigga caught. Remember I kept saying there's a reason why she's talking shit online? Oh my goodness.
Come on now.
The question is, how long has she been holding her peace?
She been had that phone. It just probably took her till just now to get the messages and shit. And then it's like miraculously, it's almost a year later that she getting the messages.
Oof. That boy ain't safe. None of them are safe now. They never really were, but oh my. I would have to go queen pin on motherfuckers. You understand what I'm saying? I would have to go. Oh Lord, can you imagine? Oh, can you imagine the anger, the millions? Can you imagine the pain and anger? Excuse me while I testify. What's that song go? Excuse me while I testify. God. Ooh. Come on.
You can't be mad.
Man. She gonna go. What was that movie with? She gonna go Proud Mary on some niggas, okay? She gonna go Proud Mary. Oh Lord. She gonna go Proud Mary. Lord have mercy. I would like to know what she read and saw. I can only imagine. And it was probably all kind of horse shit. I'm sitting here holding my head. I didn't do it. It's gonna be some Proud Mary and Crazy Larry shit going on right here. I'm wondering if the dad knows. If Lord have mercy. What you think gonna happen, man?
This motherfucker is at school. So while you got the phone, you gave her that phone, nigga, you was still able to work around these kids. What this lady say? Yo, I got to my daughter's school to go get paperwork. Look who come out to school to give me the paperwork.
Woo.
Khalil. Ugly ass.
Excuse me while I testify.
Khalil motherfucking Cook. I went to go get my paperwork, and guess who comes out to give me the paperwork? Khalil Cook. That took a friend, a beautiful bright smile, Shanquilla. I'm gonna get his ass out this school. I promise that. I'm gonna fight to get his ass fired. You don't need to be working around no children. You sick? Your days are over, little bro. Shanquilla Robinson, I got you. Y'all putting our children in danger. Y'all principals gonna hear my fucking mouth. I don't give a fuck.
Excuse me while I testify. Oh boy. Oh my goodness. I knew something was gonna happen. I knew something. Damn, it's so what would you do, brother? Like I need to ask, right?
Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, man. We be popping it. What you said? What I'm gonna do?
What would you do? Well, I already know, man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Find his ass and
That poor mother. I feel for her now. She really in the pain slot, man. She about to go proud Mary on some niggas, okay? You hear me? Ooh, excuse me while I testify. Excuse me. Excuse me. Oof. Oh my God. It's not funny. I'm just
working at school.
Oh man. His days they days is numbered. I mean like dude. It's gonna be some proud Mary shit going on around here. I know I would. Lord have mercy.
Nigga, how is you working in the school, bro?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Don't they know who the fuck that is?
Out of everybody, nigga, you working in the school?
Yeah. Ooh.
That's some crazy shit.
Man. I'm just gonna keep my ear to the ground because man, it's about to get turned up around here. It's about to get turned the fuck up. Because I know she was doing all kind of little messages. She had called everybody out. Everybody. She done said a little bit of something about everybody. And now
She got the messages, so y'all know what that means. She gonna expose their stupid ass.
damn. Well, here's new information. Nah. Damn. She about to go queen pin on a nigga. Proud Mary, all of it. This lady being in so much pain and anguish trying to get justice for her baby. And then remember I kept saying she done seen something. Something's happening. She done figured something out. Oh God dang, I was right. She was I was feeling it. It said something gonna go off. And here you go. Ooh-wee! And this nigga working at a school. Don't you know? Somebody at that school's gonna see this shit. And then that lady, if she complains, that man is out of there. Know what I mean?
Yeah, hey. I'm about to drop the link to the clubhouse. I'm gonna drop the link to the club because I'm gonna go live later. So y'all hit the link to the clubhouse. I'm gonna drop the link to the clubhouse. We gotta talk about this shit. Not only do the mom know he got the 400 messages deleted. The mama know, and she the one that got the messages. So let's see how this shit unfold. Y'all hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back. I'm gonna drop the link to the clubhouse. If y'all know, the link in the clubhouse is in the description of all the broadcasts. Every broadcast is in the description to the clubhouse. If you can't find it, just go to clubhouse. and type in the Real Gangland TV, and you'll see this symbol up there. So about like 200 something people in there, about like 260. Real quick, we had to restart it. So yeah, man, y'all tap in, man, hit that link, man. We're gonna be in that clubhouse. Yeah. Trying to make this Benz up, Northwest shit. Up toast, talk shit, and we swallow spit. Niggas fool. Thought y'all was solid. Ain't that about a bitch drip sauce? Mix the Louis with the off-white, you niggas hoes. Game goofy, nowhere boss like. VV's on my chest, Jubilee on my left wrist, and white and blue. B-22s off my checklist. Ride around with 7.6 tools, bitch, we reckless. 30 plus shots if you reach at this necklace. TVC, blast first gang, bitch, we wreck shit. Currency, watch it stack it up like it's Tetris. White on white whips, and I still got the Lexus. Step foot in front of this AR, that's a death wish. It's funny games, so them hollow tips to this funny bone. We sitting with a long ass face, I guess it's money gone. Drop low on 2 niggas, that shit had me up. Since you niggas pocket, watch you go ahead, add me up. Smack.
We ain't into that. You niggas ain't got a bag, we ain't into that. We ain't into that. That bitch don't fuck it over, we ain't into that. We ain't into that. You niggas ain't on the block, we ain't into that. We ain't into that. You niggas don't throw no guns, we ain't into that. It ain't no plan, both sides, that's what the suckers do. I feel the fans been watching close, I gotta stick and move. Glizzy with a drum, thumbing through blue strips when these bitches choosing. They trying to catch me to wet me, that's why I'm sticking moving. Bitch, I'm a thug that hold the grass, so I can't cease to shooting. 100 to the jeweler, 30 on my wrist freezing. I'm overlapping niggas quick, it ain't no competition. Bitches feeling bitter, cause I'm popping and I'm that nigga. Let it fall back, and I'ma ride one of these rapping niggas. The shooters off of E, bounce out and get the gas and niggas. Talk about 100, I spent it twice cause the bag right. Do it for my section, trying to get a set some limelight. Killers on level 4 with no parole, that's facing double life. Broke it out, the bitch was in the bricks when I was selling white. Killers on level 4 with no parole, that's facing double life. Broke it out, the bitch was in the bricks when I was selling white as bands up. We ain't into that. You niggas ain't got a bag, we ain't into that. We ain't into that. That bitch don't fuck it over, we ain't into that. We ain't into that. You niggas ain't on the block, we ain't into that. We ain't into that. You niggas don't turn no guns, we ain't into that.
Niggas know me, been off the points is like back when. Gang in the field, bitch, we be something like the Pac-10.
Gangland, we around this motherfucker, man.
Bitch, stand on that. To the head, I'll show a nigga's feelings. My 9th and Wood nigga, up the street from the village.
We ain't into that. You niggas don't turn no guns, we ain't into that.
Make sure you put him down, never leave a witness. No love for the suckers, never on forgiveness. Stomp down on these niggas, cause niggas is big. Ooh, about to blow something. Man got the stick, about to hold something.
Ooh, y'all know what it is. It's Gangland TV. Sit there and live. Hit the like button. Don't be boosty. And subscribe to the channel. And hit the notification bell, man. That shit easy, man. You know what I'm saying? Easy. Subscribing. That's free as fuck. Hit the notification bell. That's free as fuck. You know what I'm saying? Come on, man. That shit's free.
Gang in the field, bitch, we be something like the Pac-10.